Okay, so that's recording. We have everyone who is not a board member or key staff presenting tonight. Everyone's microphone and camera is on mute. Also, and please keep it that way unless we have unmuted you for your public comment. And the meeting will be translated into Spanish, and let me begin that. So you should see at the bottom the option to listen to the meeting in simultaneous translation in Spanish. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So again, call to order. We have all 7 board members here. I will lead us in the pledge. If we could unmute all for the pledge, please, Sarah, and we will stand. Place your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
That was asynchronous.
I have one item to report out from closed session. Government Code 56957, public employee dismissal. In closed session, the board took action to accept the superintendent's recommendation to immediately dismiss a permanent classified employee identified by number SP 1631152 pursuant to Ed Code sections 45302, 45304, and Personnel Commission Rule 14.1, effective September 18, 2020, and directed the superintendent or designee to notify the director of classified personnel of the board's action. The roll call vote was as follows: 7 ayes, 0 noes, 0 abstentions, 0 members absent. And that brings us to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? I see Maria, seconded by Oscar. Quick roll call. Richard?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
I'm a yes. The agenda is approved as submitted. We have one set of minutes, September 3rd. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted? I see Craig as making the motion. I see Lori second. Roll call. Richard? Sorry, before we do the roll call, are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll do the roll call. Richard?
Yes.
Oscar? I see a thumbs up. Lori?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So those are 7 yeses for the minutes. Which now brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Girardi.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, so today I'm going to give you the community an update around COVID-19 in terms of what's happening in the county, the state, and then also the district. This is going to be tag team between myself, Dr. Mora, Dr. Susan Samaras Powell, and also I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, and also Mrs. Deanna Cynthia. But before I do that, I want to bring up, introduce Mrs. Mia Wetzel. She's a previous student board member who would like to introduce our new incoming student board member. So Mia, why don't you do us the honor?
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all again. Last year, I had the honor of serving Santa Monica High School as their student board member, and I just wanted to thank you all for a wonderful year. It was an excellent learning experience, and I'm definitely a more knowledgeable and effective person because of it. I just really quickly like to express my thanks on behalf of all of ASB for bringing back Ms. Paulus as our ASB teacher and student activities director. Transitioning to online learning has been difficult for everyone, so having her remain as our teacher has provided stability for us. And we're very thankful that you brought her back and the other teachers, so thank you very much. Since COVID-19 started, our in-person year was cut short, so ASB elections were postponed. But it is with great pride that I introduce you to Samo High's newly elected student member of the board, Brianna Cornejo Perez. Brianna is one of the most tenacious, dedicated, and exceptional ASB members at our school, and we're extremely lucky to have her representing us this year on the board. She works tirelessly to better our school community and brings value to every discussion she's a part of. She has served on the Interclubs Council Committee within ASB and truly wants the best for all students at Samo. Brianna has strong critical thinking skills and is extremely thoughtful, which will make her an excellent addition to the team. I couldn't think of a better person for this role. Brianna, would you like to introduce yourself and say a couple words?
Thank you so much, Mia. Hi, everybody. My name is Brianna Cornejo Perez, and I'm the newly elected Santa Monica High School student member of the board. And I can't wait to work with each and every one of you. I look forward to voicing student opinions, advocating for student issues, and also taking back what I learned from these meetings back to our student body at Samo High. So I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight and look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Welcome, Brianna. Welcome to the board.
Welcome.
And thank you, Mia, for that wonderful introduction of Brianna. Brianna, we will see your first report will be at our next meeting on October 1st. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, Brianna is your father Sergio?
My father's Fernando.
Oh, Fernando, that's right.
Fernando.
Yeah, that's right. On 17th Street.
Daughter.
Your family grew up on 17th Street. So I know your family. I grew up on
His daughter.
Welcome.
Cornell.
Welcome.
Santa Monica is a small town. Thank you so much. Welcome,
We
Brianna.
grew up with all your family. Wow.
All right, superintendent's report, Dr. Drotti.
Awesome. So I'm going to first try to give you just an overall overview of where we are as a county, and also the implications on our plans for the future for the rest of the year. And what I'm going to do is take everybody through just how to understand the reopening strategy that the state has us engaged in, and also the county. But what I want to be clear is things are constantly changing with what's happening with the state, and also the county. So every week there's something new that seems to be coming. So what we'll do is we'll give you an update of the most recent changes as of June, as of July, and I'll give an overview, and then I'll bring up Mrs. Susan Samaras Powell, and then we'll bring up Mrs. Sinfield, and then lastly Dr. Mora. First and foremost, on August 31st, one of the newest changes is Governor Newsom unveiled a new tiered system of reopening the state based on COVID-19 positive cases. It's a pretty, the prior one was pretty complex. The system they use, makes it a little easier, but it's still somewhat complex. So what I'm gonna do is provide a tutorial of how each of you can actually look at it on your own, because all the stuff I'm gonna tell you, I'm sure you'll wanna go back and verify and have a better understanding of it. So with that said, I'm gonna share my screen right now and go right to it. And let me see, hold on. Okay, so what I'm directing all of you to is a website that anybody can look at, covid19.ca.gov. I recommend anybody go out there and look at it. You can look at what's happening across the state and county with this, and this is what all superintendents use to make a decision. As I mentioned earlier, Governor Newsom unveiled a new tier system of reopening the state based on COVID-19 positive cases. It's a 4-tier color-coded system with the following colors, and hopefully you can see what I'm pointing to you here. You have 4 different stages that we have to matriculate through as the state reopens, and what you see is a 4-color scheme here. Purple representing the highest widespread risk level for a county with more than 7 new cases per day. And what you see in this column, new cases here, is what's listed there. So, so what it's saying is you will be in purple. You have 7 or more cases per day per 100 residents in the county. So that's one indicator we'll look at. Another indicator we look at is the positivity rate. And it says here, you will be in purple if you are still, if your positivity rate is 8% on a daily basis. And then if you go down to red represents a substantial risk with the daily new cases between 4 and 7 per day per 100,000 residents, and the positivity rate of between 5 and 8. And I'm not gonna go through all of them, but you see moderate is orange, and then minimal is yellow there with those respective numbers. LA County is currently at 8.1 cases per 100,000 residents, and the positivity rate is at 3.2 per every test given. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. LA County is currently 8.1 cases per 100 residents, and the positivity rate is at 3.2 per day. However, we are still in the purple. So that might not make sense to you at this point right now, because we're saying our positivity rate seems to be below 5.8. Why aren't we in the red? That's because the state is saying that both indicators have to be at a specific level for that to take place. So we still have, before we are able to matriculate down to the red risk level area, we have to reduce the daily cases to in between 4 and 7. As I mentioned before, we're still at 8, but in terms of the positivity, we're actually doing pretty well. On top of that, before we actually go to red, we would actually reach the red level and still be identified as purple, because the state is saying that each county has to be in that level, the new upcoming level, for at least 2 weeks before we're given the permission to go into the next level. For example, if by next week, if our case rates happens to be below 7, and our positivity rate is between 5 and 8 or lower, we will still be in the purple for at least 2 weeks before we're given the permission to go to the red. And then we have to stay in that red for at least a minimum of 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And then on top of that, if we want to trickle to the moderate, which is the orange, we have to be in that moderate range for 2 weeks before we actually are given permission to matriculate down. So I know that sounds confusing, but essentially what it's saying is it'll be a while before we are able to matriculate all the way down to the moderate and minimal and so on. But the good news is we are given permission to reopen the schools under the red. So I know I sent a message out mentioning that somehow they project that it'll be around November time when the LA County goes to red. I mentioned something in one of my messages this week or last week that suggested that November may be a time in which schools around us may start reopening. That is indeed the case because the anticipation is around November. The LA County will give the nod for the whole county to go into the red area. So for those of you that want to understand exactly where we are, I'm going to kind of scroll back up here to this website. You'll notice in this here, I punched Los Angeles. You can put San Francisco. You could, we put down LA, and we put down schools. You can put down aquariums. You can put down auto repair shops, but our interest is in the schools. So, and then it says get latest update, and you'll notice Los Angeles County. It says here, schools may not reopen fully for in-person instruction until the county has been in the substantial red tier for 2 weeks, as I mentioned earlier. However, local school and health officials may decide to open elementary schools, and school officials may decide to conduct in-person instruction for limited set of students in small cohorts. Okay, so my next presenters are going to talk about what that means in terms of the small cohorts. But the whole idea that we can reopen elementary schools at this point right now, LA County is not accepting any applications for elementary schools to open. That is a change as of 2 weeks ago. Prior to 2 weeks ago, there was information out there that suggested that there may be some applications that the county will accept for elementary schools to reopen, but that's not going to be possible in LA County because LA County is saying they're not going to accept any elementary application to return before the overall reopening. You may see that in Orange County and other county areas because they're in different areas, in different counties. But but we live in LA County, and we have to live within the rules of LA County, and that's just what it is. So I'll stop sharing right now. Hopefully, you guys, for those of you out there that want to understand how to get to the site, go to covid19.ca.gov. And you can go out and look at all kinds of information. You can click on different counties where they are to identify where they are. So if I was to click on LA County here, that's not LA, I'm sorry, that's Kern County. Los Angeles County, you'll notice I got the number 8.1 cases per day when I clicked on that, and our positivity rate is actually 3.2. There's two numbers you'll see here. One is 9.1 and one is 8.1. There has to be the county and the state made an adjustment for the population. I'm not going to go into the math of what they did there. If you're interested, you can go to this website and understand it. But there is an adjustment. So, but we operate with the adjusted case rate tier assignment and the positivity rate. So right now, LA County is at 8.1. The cases rate per day, and then the positivity rate is 3.2%. With that said, I'll stop sharing and I'll bring up.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you respond? I guess because we're getting emails from families that might not be using this as we're using this as our guide, but are saying that cases in Santa Monica, particularly, or in the city of Malibu, which is our two jurisdictions areas in our school district, have lower cases.
Yeah.
So.
It's got, yeah, we can't disassociate ourselves from LA County. We have to live within LA County rules.
Okay, thank you.
With that said, I'm going to bring up Mrs. Susan Samars Powell, and she'll talk about one of the components I just got through talking about, which is bringing back small groups of students and also opportunities to bring back supervision for students that we want to, families that we want to support. Mrs. Powell, Dr. Powell.
Thank you, Dr. Drati. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I wanted to share that as of today, Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District has applied for a waiver with the state of California to provide in-school work hubs to provide support for families with high priority needs. We have submitted to begin with 2 elementary locations, each of which would hold a pod of 12 students who are children of Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District employees. We are working with community organizations to determine how we can support the 7 secondary children of SMM-USD staff who have made the request for a hub as well. Once approved, these locations will only serve students during the school day. They will be staffed by CDS teachers and assistants and will be funded by SMM-USD. There will be no extended care offered. My coordinator, Monica Simon, and I would like to thank Cynthia McGregory and Sherry Hinding at Franklin, and Christian Fuhrer and Nazareth Wakwame at Grant for opening their doors to these 2 particular hubs. We walked their sites last week and have designated drop-off and pickup locations, appropriate rooms for each pod, appropriate eating and play areas, and designated sick rooms should the need arise. FIP is working on final signage. The nurses are working with CDS admin to finalize protocols for health checks and appropriate PPE, as well as physical distancing in the classrooms. And M&O is assisting in making sure the room setups are correct, even moving electronic plugs to make sure the rooms work. Clearly, opening even 1 room on a campus is no small feat. We would very much like to thank the many departments and groups who have assisted us as we work through these processes and protocols to open up. As these 2 sites develop routines, we'll begin working with additional sites to do the same, so we may offer in-school work hubs in priority order to families who have made the request for additional support. These hubs will be offered to English learners, homeless and foster youth children, children on subsidy, and if space is available, for families who work outside the home. Deanna Sinfield, my colleague, the Director of Special Education, will address how students with identified special needs will receive support in tiered ways. Dr. Mora will be addressing information on how we will support English learners throughout this process as well. The process for applying for a state waiver is lengthy. We had already completed the first part and received the required next round of paperwork this past week. We submitted this paperwork this afternoon with supporting documents to the state, and we are waiting to be informed of our approval. This can take anywhere between 2 to 5 weeks, as they have just indicated that they are receiving many requests for waivers. We will be informed at that point if we have approval to open with the waivers, or if we need to provide more information or information to amend and to be resubmitted. Once we have that information, we will be able to contact families to determine next steps for everyone. We hope this process will go as smoothly as possible, but we do understand from everyone who is going through this, it is a lengthy process, and we thank everyone for their patience. I'd now like to turn it over to Deanna Sinfield, our Director of Special Education, who will share her component as well.
Thank you, Dr. Powell, Dr. Marge Powell, I should say. There's a lot going on, as you know, and as most of you are aware, LA County Department of Public Health stated that special education assessments can resume in person, and small cohorts of students can begin to be served on campus. With this announcement comes a lot of guidelines that need to be met to ensure the safety and health of students and staff while on campus. The SMM-USD Special Education Department has been working diligently to meet these guidelines while preparing our sites to welcome students under this plan. Our team will begin providing in-person individual assessments for special education by September 25th, that's next week. Our psychologists will be the first educators to begin the process. We will have 3 assessment hubs. 2 will be in Santa Monica at McKinley Elementary and the Obama Center, and 1 will be in Malibu, serving the students of everyone in Malibu at Malibu Elementary School. All 3 locations will serve their neighboring schools. I want to thank Anthony Fuller, Jessica Risch, Dr. Ashley Benjamin, and Chris Hertz for their help making this happen and opening up their schools, as well as our nurses who have really been helping us divide the PPE, making sure that everything is safe for students to come on campus, and our building and operations people. They have been invaluable in making this happen. We are also working on a phased approach for bringing small cohorts of students with great need back to school campuses. These programs include our special education preschool programs, transition program, intensive program, life skills program, and Step E and Step I programs. We will bring 1 to 2 programs back at a time as soon as we have completed all the necessary steps. Following this approach, we will plan to bring another phase of students back onto campuses for related services. This approach will be more complicated because of the cohorting rules and the fact that we can only bring about 10% of students back at a time. And most of our school sites have a total of more than 10% of their population that have IEPs. So we have to do it in a phased approach to make sure that we are getting the students with the most need first and then working our way through the rest of the students. As part of our planning, we have begun to survey a few classrooms in our highest need categories to see who would like to return to campus and who would like to continue with a distance learning platform so that we can make sure our programs meet the needs of our families. We want to thank you all for your patience during this process. It's not easy. We're working really hard, planning every day and trying to match the changing rules that continue to occur as we are doing this. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mora.
Thank you, Ms. Sinfield. So good evening, everyone. Our team in Ed Services has been hard at work coordinating the administration of the initial and summative English Language Proficiency Assessment for California, also known as the LPAC. Despite the multiple delays that have taken place due to the changing protocols for remote testing, we continue to move forward with the planning. At this time, we are still waiting for the California Department of Education to finalize revisions to the directions for administrators of the LPAC in order to begin our testing. So we continue to fine-tune our plans and our coordinating efforts. And as we await these final pieces, we are providing additional training to our LPAC testers on the implementation of remote testing practices so that they feel confident and are ready to implement these practices as soon as we receive all of the finalized protocols. If a student has been identified to participate in the initial LPAC testing, parents have received an email from the site informing them of this remote testing. Please make sure that you complete the document and return it to your school site. This will assist us in scheduling and in ensuring that we provide our students with the support that they need. I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Maureen Bradford, our Interim Assessment Research and Evaluation Director, Ms. Gabby Gonzalez, Rogers Instructional Coach, who's supporting us with LPAC testing, and all of our LPAC testers for their unwavering commitment to creating the most optimal remote testing environment for our students. As I mentioned, it has been no easy feat to develop an administration plan when protocols are in constant flux. I also want to thank our site administrators, our office staff, instructional coaches, literacy and language interventionists, and ELD leads for doing all of the back house work to ensure that all of our data is accurately entered so that we can make sure that we're connecting with all of our families and students. In addition to coordinating the LPAC administration, we are also working on developing a plan to address the recent guidelines from LA County Department of Public Health to provide small cohorts of 12 English learner students in-person offerings. Our 721 K through 12 English learners are enrolled in receiving distance learning experiences across our schools and across our classrooms. And this poses unique challenges as we think about the cohorting process. Despite these challenges, we are exploring how to offer these in-person experiences for our English learners in a way that minimizes disruption to their distance learning experience and community that they have developed during these past 4 weeks. I will be sending a brief survey to our EL families to elicit their interest in in-person offerings, and we'll also be meeting with our DLAC to further discuss our options as we move forward with the implementation of guidelines and cohorting for in-person instruction. Thank you.
Yeah. So in summary, I just want to make sure that we're very clear on when we're talking about reopening and the small group cohorts. It can be very confusing. So I want to make sure I just kind of outline a lot of stuff we just said right now. As I mentioned before, there's a 4-tier system that we are in. We are currently in the purple stage. Once we are, and in that purple stage, we can apply to serve our students in small cohorts that are English learner and special education. And in that process, we're also going to try to create some supervision hubs for certain groups of our population, such as our educators' children that are having a hard time teaching at home while watching their own children, and then eventually expand from there. And it has to be done in a way we can actually afford it. So that's all that gonna happen in the purple stage. Once we go into the red, as a community, we have to decide what we're gonna do about coming back. Okay, we have to decide what we're gonna do. And I know later on today, we'll talk briefly about some of the protocols a little bit, not in full detail, but about some of the ideas that we've been considering from the past. And none of that is in stone. We still have time to make that decision. But when we eventually are in a red, and like you said, there'll be a lot more conversations with the community to see how we are going to be able to come back, if we come back at all. Because I think unless the state says no, we will have the option to continue distance learning if we wanted to, or in an adjusted way. But as a district, we just have to understand that once we're in the red, we will have the ability to come back with certain protocols in place. With that said, Mr. Keene, that concludes the superintendent's report, and I'll stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Dr. Dradi, and thanks everybody who presented. That was a lot of information.
Yeah.
Dr. Joy, I just want to bring up one point that I know that has been bandied around a little bit. I'm not sure if you're ready to address this yet.
Yeah.
You sort of intimated a little bit that I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Do you see a scenario in which case we would make we've mentioned these small ways in which one-on-one assessments and students with higher needs might be getting some in-person on-campus experiences. Do you see us making a larger shift from our current distance learning platform before the end of this semester, if the state allows, or are we really thinking of a second semester switch if the state allows?
Based on, and I don't want to go into all the different protocols because we're going to have another time to express all this and then with the community. But in any kind of shift, I don't see us doing anything before the end of the semester. So obviously, I got to make that a formal statement, and I would love to do it, but I don't see us doing anything before the. And then there's a lot of proponents out there that say people that want back now. They just don't understand the disruption that would cause in the current system. So, but
and also like you outlined, we have to wait until we hit these numbers, stay in these numbers, and then make this big shift, and then the disruption to instruction.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's just, again, you're sharing that was not a formal statement. You're sharing what you're feeling right now, and we'll take it as such. I know that Gail Pinsker is here, and Gail, I know that you have a million things on your plate every day. I'm going to ask you for 1,000,001. If there's any way that we can take this presentation, the superintendent report, and even if it's bullet pointed, and share the finer points with our community in some sort of email blast, I think that'd be wonderful for the broader school population to hear some of the finer points of this presentation, if that's doable.
We're planning on doing that tomorrow.
Wonderful. I'm glad you were already on it. So now you're only doing 1,000,000 things. Thank you.
Let me one more thing, Joff. I just remind. I know there might be some anxiety with some arts people, performing arts people in Samo High about monies owed to the boosters for performing arts with people that I guess they collected tickets with a vendor, and that vendor has the money and has disappeared because of COVID and all that. So I want to let the families know that I've talked to the staff and that the district is going to take on that responsibility, so they don't have to worry about the stress of trying to get that money. We'll go after the vendor as a district, but the families don't have to worry about having to recoup that money themselves. That's it.
Okay. Okay, so I see Richard has his hand up. Just as a point of practice, I don't like getting too many involved in the super report, but you're Richard, and I'm going to say, Richard, take it away.
Well, you're very sweet to say that it's Richard, but I will say that I think it's, me personally, it's totally appropriate for us to ask the superintendent questions from the superintendent's report. So I understand we don't want a discussion item.
Okay.
But I will be abbreviated because Ben added what I was going to ask about. So I know, thank you, Dr. Dradi. Well, as I think we all know, there were several public speakers who came to us and noticed one of the deck that there was some real concern about, I always want to say brown paper bag or brown lunch bag or something, but it was that firm, right, that was used by our nonprofit, well, not our nonprofit, yeah, I guess the kids, our students, and selling tickets to their performances. And I think it's really important that you said what you did, because I know it will give great, it'll make people breathe a bit deeply. And I just wanted to repeat, Dr. Druddy, that, because you didn't mention this part, but it's like $35,000 that our students were cheated out of. And undoubtedly, I know that Melody was going to go after, we would go after and get in line with everybody else. But I think the fact that the district is going to make sure that their programs are made whole is something that's very important. I just want to say thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah.
Brown paper ticket.
Yeah.
Brown paper ticket. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. On that note, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Dr. Dradi. Consent. Do I have anybody who wants to? Well, let me ask first. Does anyone need to pull anything out of consent? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll ask if anybody wants to move consent as submitted. Craig is so moved. Lori is seconded. We'll do a roll call. Richard? is a yes. Thumbs up. Ralph?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Oscar?
Attention.
Maria?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that is 6 yeses, 1 abstention. Consent is moved. Which now brings us to major action items. The first item is item H1, Adopt Resolution 2005, National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month. I know Dr. Drotti wanted to say something before I give the microphone over to Board Member Leon Vasquez.
Absolutely. So we take a lot of pride in recognizing all the different celebrations of the people in our country. Obviously, normally we would have our teachers review some of the work that they've done in the classroom. It's just right now everybody's so stressed out about just maintaining the current curriculum and adjusting. So we're going to circle back and have a formal presentation in the honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. But today we have the resolution. Hopefully you guys approve it. But just I want to tell everybody out there that we're going to come back and do a formal presentation once the teachers and the students have something in place for us to present.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Drotti. Yes, Oscar?
Before we vote, maybe Carrie Upton can tell us, there's a mural that existed on Santa Monica High School's campus of Cesar Chavez. And from my understanding, that mural was removed. I haven't seen that exactly, but is that true? Can someone give us a quick update on that?
Yes, I see Steve Massetti with his hand up.
Thank you. Yes, Oscar, the whole wall, that whole area has been removed. Prior to, I don't know if it was prior to the beginning of construction or at the beginning of construction, but certainly prior to demolition of that area, we had a company come out and photo document that mural so that if we'd like to, we can recreate it somewhere. In fact, I believe we used, I think it's White. It's the company that does student photographs. They worked with Ms. Baxter to come out and photo document that. So we have that data, or the images available. But yes, that wall has been removed. The grades there changed significantly. The olive tree that was in the center of the circle has remained. It's been protected in place, and we've adjusted the grades on that part of campus to make sure that olive tree will stay there in its place without having to be transplanted.
Yeah, I just want to say that, there's been other murals in the community where there's been a whole process and money even invested, a lot of things talked about. And we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month now. I thought it was appropriate for us to just, for us as a community to understand that, there's very few places, where Latino, Hispanic, Mexican American culture is exhibited in our public space. And this is one of the few. The students worked hard to make that mural happen. Dr. Mark Kelly was principal at Santa Monica High when that mural was approved by him and his staff. And I just want to make sure that we moving forward. I know that there's construction that's being done, but that we recognize that as the peace and the justice. The peace is important because the tree, the olive tree, was planted by the students as a response to the war in Vietnam and the protest movements in the country against the war in Vietnam. And then, so I'm glad that we were able to save that tree. I just hope that moving forward, when we talk about the reconstruction, of that area that we talk about, that there is a place, for Cesar Chavez, for the concepts of peace, unity, some of the words that were, exhibited on that mural. I hope that we can move forward and rectify sort of what has happened, as a result of the construction project. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thanks. At this point, so Maria, if you would be okay presenting the resolution.
Yeah. Well, let me start off. I'll just pick some of these. And let me just start off with, whereas the Hispanic Latino American community consists of distinct groups, including people from Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, and the Iberian Peninsula, and where Hispanics have had an important part of the history and heritage of the Americas. And it started off yesterday, Hispanic Heritage Month, with the Mexican Independence Day, between the eve of the 15th, 16th of September. We celebrate the achievements of Hispanic Latino Americans and their important part of the history and heritage of our nation. And just as Oscar mentioned, Cesar Chavez, we also have to acknowledge the other side of the farm worker movement, which has been instrumental in the history of California and the Southwest. Dolores Huerta, who's an icon and one of my mentors, and that she is 90 years young, was 90 years young in April. And I know that we honored her, and we had a resolution for her birthday in April, but she's one of those that is a legend in our history, and one of those people that we hope is the history that our students will learn in this district. Hispanics and Latino, I hate to use the word Hispanics, but I'll say, Latino Americans have enriched our community through contributions in many professions and fields, including education, law, government, business, science, sports, and the arts. And we worked hard, and the determination continues to inspire all those who dream of a better life for themselves and their families in the United States. Therefore, be it resolved that during the National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District joins with all Americans in celebrating this rich and diverse culture, and encourages all members of our community to recognize the important role of Hispanics in creating and building this great nation. We further resolve that appropriate lessons and units of study about the contributions of Americans of Hispanic Latino descent take place in our schools, not only during this month, but throughout the whole school year. And we, again, will pass and adopt this today, the 17th day of September. One of the good things, and I look forward to what Dr. Dradi said, that hopefully we will be able to give it a little more justice by having some presentations. We have a good item later on in the agenda in terms of consent, that one of the key pieces that I think will honor it is we're going to be continuing our mariachi program. So that's something that we'll add on. Hopefully we can have a little concert from our mariachi group later on in the semester. So thank you, everybody.
So Maria, do you want to move the item?
Yes, I move the resolution for the National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month.
Great. Is there a second for the item?
Second.
I see Oscar is the second. So we'll do a roll call. Richard?
Yes.
Brianna, so I have to remember there's a student board member here. So Brianna, when we do roll call votes, I will come to you for your vote. You can unmute yourself and yes, no, abstain, whatever you want to do. So Brianna.
Yes.
Thank you. Ralph.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Oscar.
Yes.
Maria.
And proudly sí se puede.
And I am a yes as well. That is 7. So that resolution is approved. Which brings us to H2, adopt resolution number 2006, endorsing measure SM on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot. Do we have anybody presenting this, or am I giving an overview? Is that allowed? I'm going to turn to.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will do the quick overview. I don't know what the rules are. So I will read one of the whereas. Whereas measured SM would provide new locally controlled revenue by increasing the city's real estate transfer tax only on property sold for $5 million or more, providing funding needed to preserve Santa Monica's essential city services and help restore programs. So that is measure SM. It's anticipated to raise $3 million a year for city revenue. We anticipate some of that money being used to support our programs, including after-school sports and other services that were affected by the budget cuts in the city this year. Ralph, I saw your hand up. Or is that just stretching? You're muted, buddy.
I'll move the item.
Wonderful. I will second the item. Ha. If any more discussion, I'll do a roll call. Richard.
Yes.
Brianna.
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Oscar. Hands up is a yes. Maria.
Yes.
Yes. Craig.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That is 7 yeses on the advisory from Brianna. Wonderful. H3, adopt resolution number 2007. Urge Congress to approve HR 763, Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. I'm assuming again, is there anybody here who would like to speak to this from the audience? If not, I will read the core aspect of it. Whereas HR 763 puts an annually increasing fee on carbon emissions at their source, fossil fuel companies will then pass the increased cost on to consumers. However, the fees collected are distributed to American households in the form of a dividend. According to economic studies, low and moderate income families would actually come out ahead since they are lower users of carbon. In addition, Columbia University Center for Global Energy Policy projects that by 2030, HR 73 will reduce carbon emissions beyond the US commitments in the Paris Accord, reduce air pollution, and shift electricity generation to low or zero emission energy sources. Therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District again calls on Congress to take swift and effective action on adopting this legislation. And I think our air quality over the past week or two speaks to this resolution. Does anybody have a comment or something they would like to discuss? I see Lori's raised to move the item, I believe. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Richard, got his second in quickly. Sorry, Maria. I will do a roll call. Richard.
Yes.
Brianna. I saw yes, but you weren't unmuted. Was that a yes? Great. Okay. Ralph.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Oscar.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that is 7 yes plus the advisory yes. Great. Renew resolution number 20-02 declaring an emergency and delegating authority to enter into contracts necessitated by the spread of coronavirus. I believe this is Carrie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been tending to do it. One day we'll have a director of purchasing, and I'll happily pass it over. So this is to renew the resolution on to allow for purchasing as needed due to the coronavirus pandemic. This month, I mean, we are once adopted. We must come back to you every major meeting for you to renew it until the emergency or the need for the emergency action concludes. So we are back to you again. This particular time, there are not very many activities. Mostly it's around our continuing to get plexiglass screens up in places. Though very soon we'll be coming to with a very large one, which is something we're doing in the Facility Improvement Office, which is we have a bid out on the street to improve our HVAC systems, bringing in ionization units that will be able to neutralize bacteria, mold, and virus, and also smoke molecules. So it'll be something for long-term indoor air quality, and that is being put together, and it's heading your way. But we are doing it on a very much faster emergency bid process than what we would usually do. So we'd ask you to continue to renew this, and we'll be back at the next meeting to do it again.
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve as submitted by Lori, second by Craig? Any more discussion or questions for this? Okay, seeing none, I will go to a roll call. Richard.
Yes.
Brianna. Brianna, are you a thumbs up?
I abstain.
You're going to abstain? Okay. Ralph.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Oscar.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. So so that is approved 7-0. So Brianna, we'll have to make sure that you get access to the agenda ahead of time so you can do your review. I know this is your first meeting. I'm putting you on the spot with these votes, so I apologize. But we'll make sure you're logged in. You can do your advanced homework, and it'll be easier on October 1st. But we're very happy to have you here tonight. Okay. H5, public hearing, learning continuity and attendance plan. Dr. Drotti, are you introducing this, or is Dr.
Yeah. I'll just, before I introduce Dr. Mora to present on this, as I mentioned earlier in the superintendent's report, there are constantly things changing with the state of California, including some of the statutory responsibilities that they bestow on us. So Dr. Mora will go over why we're having this conversation now, because I know there's some interest from the community about why we're talking about this now and what's in that information. So we'll go over where we've been in the spring all the way up to now, and why this document is necessary as a statutory responsibility of the district, and also to secure the funding that you just approved. You know, some of the things that we're purchasing with plexiglass and all that is all tied into. There's some CARES funds that's tied into the plan that Dr. Mora is gonna present. So with that said, Dr. Mora, why don't you take us through the presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Dradi. Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Dr. Dradi, cabinet and guests. I want to take a moment to appreciate the hard work of our teachers and staff, and also the support of our families. I understand that it is not easy to balance the changing demands in their personal and professional lives, and yet they are meeting this challenge with hope, optimism, and success. Before I move to our presentation, I want to provide a bit of context and take a moment to recognize the contributions of the various committees, councils, working groups, parent groups, formal and informal, that provided input throughout the past 7 months. I believe it was the same hope and optimism that motivated all of these groups to engage and support us throughout that process. Since the physical closures in March, our LCAP PAC, our LCAP DCC, and our DLAC met to provide input and guidance on the development of what was to be our 2023 LCAP. That evolved to the operations written report with the notion that we would have a 2021 LCAP that would then be due on December 15th. Then that changed again to what is now the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. So although we did not know during all of our meetings what the final plan would be called, we knew that with every new guidance we received from the state, our commitment to meeting and engaging in the process would support with the development of the fall 2020 plan. The initial guidance we received was provided by Executive Order N5620 on April 22nd. The order extended the deadline for the 2021 Local Control Accountability Plan, known as our LCAP, to December 15th. It also delayed the implementation of the 3-year LCAP template that was adopted by the State Board of Education for us to use until 2021 through 24. In addition, it also waived the adoption of the LCAP prior to the adoption of the 2021 budget, including all expenditures. So in other words, it allowed the actions and services that our committees had provided input on to be approved with the flexibility for any adjustments with the December 15th date in mind. It was also at this time that we worked on the development of the operations written report that was approved on June 25th. Throughout the spring and the summer, we continued to meet with our various committees, and we also developed and implemented a survey for parents and staff to elicit their perspectives on distance learning and preferences for reopening options. We established 2 working groups, the Teaching and Learning Redesign groups, that were charged with developing common agreements on the improvements and implementation of distance learning, and on a possible hybrid, or what now the state is referring to as a blended model, for in-person instruction when it was safe to return to campus. The Teaching and Learning Redesign Working Group, composed of 68 members, teachers, counselors, nursing staff, site administrators, district administrators, met from May to August to develop these common agreements. We also met with various affinity groups to better understand their perspectives and gather input from students and families. Town hall meetings were held in July to review the various models for reopening and answer questions that were submitted by staff, families, and/or community members. We had more than 1,000 attendees at our 3 town hall meetings. Then Senate bill was approved at the end of June, Senate Bill 98. And this established that the local control accountability and annual update were no longer required for the 2021 school year. It also separated the development and adoption of the budget overview for parents from the development and adoption of the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, known as the LCP, which is what we're reviewing today. The Learning and Continuity and Attendance Plan intends to combine the Executive Order N5620 that was published in April that envisioned an off-cycle local control accountability plan that would be due on December, and the ongoing need for the district to plan to return to school during these uncertain times without requiring two separate plans. The Learning Continuity Plan template was released on August 4th, and the plan was to be developed, reviewed, and approved by September 30th per the CDE. So we had a very truncated timeline by which to complete this. But what supported the development of our preliminary plan that will be presented before you today were all the formal and informal meetings that we held that provided us with valuable input from students, teachers, staff, parents, and community members. It was the unwavering commitment of our LCAP DCC, LCAP PAC, DLAC to continue maintaining the focus and provide input when there was so much uncertainty and ambiguity in why we were even doing it. So as we review the proposal today, it is an opportunity for during this public meeting to really be able to share the preliminary plan and provide you and the community at large the opportunity to comment on our proposal. As I review the proposal, I ask that we keep in mind that with any proposed plan, we have to be willing to evolve and adapt as guidelines change and as new information is brought forth and presented for us to consider. The spirit of the plan is to propose a guideline by which we can continue moving forward and make adjustments as needed in order to best serve our students and our families and ensuring the health and safety of all of our members. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and move us through our presentation for the preliminary learning continuity plan. So as I mentioned, this is our preliminary learning and accountability and attendance plan. So the purpose for our time together today is to review the SB 98 requirements, present the preliminary plan, and identify our next steps. So Senate Bill 98 legislation has some key points that I want to showcase for us tonight. The first and foremost area that needs to be highlighted is the requirements for districts to offer in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. And with that, we are required to be able to identify a plan of action that delineates how we will be providing those in-person instructional offerings and also addressing all of the safety and health guidelines and protocols. It also maintains the instructional day requirements with in-person and distance learning. You see the minutes delineated before you, 180 minutes for kindergarten, 230 for first through third, and 240 for fourth through 12. These minutes in the distance learning experience can be completed both synchronously and asynchronously experiences. It also requires that we maintain daily student participation for attendance. And within that, we are monitoring the work completion that our students are fulfilling. It also delineates very strict requirements for distance learning. So for distance learning, this is something that we have been able to implement, and we continue to refine our practices in relationship to these particular points. The first one being access to connectivity and devices. We have been working diligently to ensure that our students and families have the resources that they need. The second one, content and supports are aligned to grade level standards. So our teachers have been working together. They came together prior to the start of the year at the elementary space and have been working together at the secondary space during once instruction started to really hone in and identify those essential standards in order to delve deeper into the concepts for our students within this new space and new approach to teaching and learning. It also called out the importance and the focus on ensuring that we were delivering special education services to our students. In addition, it called out the importance to providing English language development, designated ELD being called out within the schedule, and also integrated ELD being provided throughout the day to ensure access for our English learners. And then the requirement of daily live interaction with a certificated employee to ensure that we are engaging our students and connecting with them and that they are having access to learning experiences throughout the day. SB 98 also called for specific stakeholder engagement. So we were tasked with presenting the learning continuity and attendance plan to our parent advisory committee. So for us, that's our LCAP PAC. And then the District English Learner Advisory Committee, which is our DLAC. And we needed to hold separate meetings with these two particular groups in order for them to review and provide comments on the sections that were available. And lastly, the superintendent and or designee needs to respond in writing to the comments received from this committee.
Yeah, Dr. Mora, can you speak to why those two committees historically through the LCAP process, why they are the statutory group that we must meet with?
Of course, the reason we need to meet with our LCAP PAC and our DLAC is our LCAP PAC is primarily comprised of families of unduplicated students. So families of English learners, low income, homeless, foster youth. And we need to make sure that we are connecting with them because we are addressing how we are increasing and improving services for our students. And our District English Learning Advisory Committee is the committee that is focused on monitoring and providing guidance around the implementation of our master plan and the supports that are delineated for our English learners. So these are the two advisory committees that are in place that we are required to connect with and ensure that we're getting comments comments and feedback in regards to our actions and services within this plan.
And it's important for everybody to understand that through the LCAP process, even before this, the COVID-19 and this new plan, learning continuity plan, that is now the LCAP. Monies, extra funds are attached to those unduplicated students that Dr. Mora just got through explaining. The CARES funds that we receive to do all these mitigations are aligned to the number of students we have under those two groups. So if you are, say, in LA Unified or other big districts, what we call our concentration district, you do have a lot more money from the federal government to do that. Whereas ours is based on the population size that we have for those groups. And so the CARES funds for all the mitigations that we need to do this, the additional funds are aligned to those groups. And by statute, we have to engage with that stakeholder group officially, but it's not just limited to them. We go beyond that in acquiring input from a bunch of other, the rest of the families as well.
No, exactly, and I think that's one of the and we'll talk about the various forms that we've engaged our stakeholder groups. Again, this particular iteration of the plan was presented to us once SB 98 was approved at the end of June. However, the template and what needed to be included was not provided to us until August 4th, which really created a really short timeline. So for us, it was important that we continue engaging in this process even back in March to really think about how are we going to respond and how are we going to address the impacts that physical school closures have had on our students, specifically our unduplicated students, our target students, during this time period. So the committee kept meeting with that in mind, knowing that we would need to develop a plan of action. And so those meetings really focused on how are we going to respond? What are some things that we need to anticipate in order to be able to develop something once we received more clear guidance and direction on what that would entail. So the approval process, after those meetings with the two target committees was to then have a public hearing of the proposed plan to allow for comment and review from our broader learning community. So that is today. The intention is for us to be able to then come back next week for the learning continuity plan to be approved. So we are also providing options for remote participation. We have, we are able to collect any comments via our Let's Talk portal and/or any commentary that's being provided this evening. So the learning continuity plan has very specific components. It has our general information, a section for stakeholder engagement, continuity of learning, that is the bulk of the plan and is composed of multiple subsections, mental health and social emotional learning, pupil engagement and outreach, school nutrition, and lastly, increase and improved services. So within this presentation, you're going to see increase and improved services right after the continuity of learning because it's connected. So I did not want to separate it and put it at the end. It's really embedded within the plan for continuity of learning. So our stakeholder engagement, as I had shared previously, we developed and implemented a survey that was titled Our Schools Closure Impact. And we had a very, very strong response from our families and from staff. So we were able to truly utilize this quantitative piece of information to identify common themes and then by which to be able to develop various action plans and models to be able to move forward and get additional input from our families. We also then looked at, from these surveys, developing focus groups. So we met with our high school students. We had affinity groups. We met with our LCAP PAC and DLAC, our PTA council. We met with our Latinx families that also were part of the PAC, LCAP PAC, and our African American Black families also that were a part of our LCAP PAC to really get a greater understanding of the impacts of distance learning and how we can improve and how we can respond based on those needs. We also held town hall meetings. We had 3 in order to present possible reopening plans, various models for the continuation and for the plan for the fall. We had our Model A, which was all students coming back. Model B, which provided what we call the hybrid model, which is ensuring that there was physical distancing among students. And then the distance learning Model C, which is what we're currently implementing. So we reviewed all of those models during our town hall meetings, and the community and families and staff were able to submit questions and concerns that we answered during our presentations at those 3 distinct town hall sessions. We also had Dr. Dradi's superintendent updates that went out to the community to share our status and how things were progressing. And then, as I mentioned, we had developed our teaching and learning redesign groups. We had 2 groups that we developed. The first group was comprised of district and site level administrators. And then the second group included district and site level representatives, teachers, we had counselors, we had a nurse that were a part of that team. And these 2 teams created a feedback loop. So we would meet and be able to communicate and expand and build from each other's input in relationship to the charge, which was developing distance learning common agreements around teaching and learning and providing input around what would be that hybrid model that we would want to explore as we delved deeper in this process. So those 2 committees were able to provide the input around the Model B portion, which would be what the state now refers to the blended model, which is hybrid, and the distance learning. And many of you were able to see the end product of these working groups through the distance learning parent guidelines. The work of the team was insurmountable. They did amazing work, and I'm really proud of all of their all of the time that they provided and of their efforts and openness and willingness to engage in really thoughtful, critical conversations to improve and showcase the expertise of our teachers. And I think we have all been able to experience the hard work of our teachers and how the efforts of this committee really have supported the learning experiences that our students are engaging in now. And then,
yeah,
go ahead, Dr. Roddy.
No, go ahead. I was gonna, after you're done, I was gonna make a comment afterwards.
No, of course. And then lastly, again, we had to meet with our DLAC, LCAP PAC, and LCAP DCC to review and comment the preliminary plan prior to holding our public hearing for the community at large. Dr. Dradi?
Yeah, I just want to repeat, because I think it's worth repeating, that the response everyone is feeling right now in distance learning is a product of the input that was provided all along the spring and summer, and that cultivated what people are experiencing right now, and also the agreement we have with CTA to allow us to experience what we are experiencing. If you remember, we didn't abandon. We were approaching two different models. Possibly, we approached this work in three different models. One was distance learning all along, which is what you're experiencing now, and also the hybrid Model A and Model B. But because the state came down and actually said, and the county said, no one is coming back in person, we somewhat held that back and didn't continue the process of evolving that. And so our energy turned to strictly really making sure that the distance learning was solidified, because we knew at that point that is what we have to address. That does not mean that we don't look at when we are going to come back, because we can't, at some point, as a community, we have to decide, obviously, what that looks like when we come back, and we have some ideas on those things. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that we have to work for two different approaches. One is distance learning, what you're experiencing now. But at some point, when we go into that red level, everybody around us is going to be asked to come back for in-person instruction. We, at that point, will have to decide whether we continue with distance learning or come back. But our options are somewhat limited in how we come back because of the state protocols. But I just want to kind of state that, because some people are probably wondering out there, why are you even talking about hybrid and all that? Why are you talking about all this other stuff? We can't stop, because it's gonna be upon us soon, and we need to buy all the equipment and that you guys just approved recently in the previous action item, but all the equipment that we're purchasing, all those are aligned to our ability to be able to come back in person at some point. So I wanted to kind of make sure we state that.
No, definitely. Thank you, Dr. Dradi. And I think that also speaks to the very first main point of SB 98, which is making sure that we are able to provide in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible within the within the health and safety guideline protocols that we are provided, right, that are delineated for us. So this is our commitment to continue to plan and prepare for when it's time for us to return. So based on the survey data and the various conversations that we had formally and informally, this is some of the summary feedback that we received. So these are the themes that emerged from the data and from the conversations that we held. So there was a desire to make sure that we were focusing on student engagement and on the social emotional learning piece. Making sure that we were improving quality of online teaching, that we were providing additional supports for our students, that we delineated and offered professional learning experiences for our teachers. And I think all of you can see within the schedule that we have embedded professional learning time built in for teachers, that we address the childcare needs of our our staff and our families. And earlier today, Dr. Susan Samarge Powell shared with you the progress that we've made in regards to our in-school work hubs and how we will be meeting the needs of our staff to begin with and then build out as needed. And also ensuring that the decisions that we are making are taking into account the health and safety needs of our learning community, of our students, of our teachers, of our staff, of our families, so that we're making sure that our decisions are guided with that in mind. And lastly, improving communication between home and school. So I think all of these themes that emerged was really what drove the development of our distance learning guidelines and can be seen reflected in the document that was shared with families, and that you'll also see interweaved within the learning continuity plan. Additionally, when we delve deeper into the survey that we provided to families and staff, we found that when we asked the question of families, if the district reopens schools in the fall, how likely would they be to sending their child to school? What we found is that 17% said that they would not likely at all or slightly likely send their children to school. So only 17% said no. The majority of our families were interested in being able to send their children to school. So then the following question was, if resuming school is normal in the fall is not advised by state health and education agencies, how supportive would you be of the following alternatives? So saying we're not ready to move back, would you be supportive of full-time online learning? 51% said extremely supportive, very supportive, or moderately supportive. So we had a large 51% of families who said that they would support distance learning. What's interesting is that we had for the following two, the second one saying in-person learning with social distancing measures in place, we had 71% of families that said they were extremely supportive, very supportive, or moderately supportive of returning to school, even if health and education agencies did not support that. And then in the hybrid model, or the blended model, which is what the state is transitioning to calling this, but we'll stay with hybrid, of in-person and online learning. So half of the time in-person instruction, half of the time doing remote learning. 71% said they were extremely, very, or moderately supportive. So this information also guided the preliminary documents that you see before you today.
And I want to restate that it's Dr. Morris said preliminary. We're not saying that this is where people are feeling right now after the new things that have come out, new information that have come out from the state and about this disease and the new approaches and all that. But this is what guided us up to this point. We will have to go back out before we come back to really assess where families are at that, where our staff is and where our parents are and our students are before we reopen, so that way we have clarity. So that's a part of the work we're going to do. So when you see this, I don't want people thinking that this is the last time we're going to survey the families. We plan to survey more, but right now we're in a place where we have this statutory requirement, and we have a game plan all along that we developed that was aligned to all the meetings and surveys that Dr. Moore just has, but it's preliminary. We still have more work to do to address areas that we need to address.
Additional feedback that we received from our DLAC, LCAP DCC, and LCAP PAC were to provide supplemental support for our English learners at the secondary level that is similar to what we provide at the elementary level by our language and literacy interventionists. So we will be exploring how we can provide that. Also exploring how to provide before and after school intervention that is being funded if our teachers are not available to deliver the service. So we've always historically provided funding for before and after school intervention and academic support, but knowing just the challenges that we're all facing, we want to make sure that we're exploring other options if our teachers are not available in order to deliver that. They also recommended allocating funding to replace older technology that teachers and students are using. I think that's extremely important, especially in our current modality of teaching. Providing teacher planning time during the embedded professional learning, and exploring ways to expand professional learning opportunities to our paraprofessionals and instructional assistants. They also requested additional funding to pay staff to develop short 3-minute videos to help students with technology. So that way they would be able to view videos that were short and concise and to the point to assist them with how do I upload documents? How do I utilize Google Classroom? Things that they can refer to on their own time in order to assist them as we continue within this modality of learning. There was also a request to provide tech troubleshooting workshops for families. We know that just like our students, families have varying degrees of understanding and ability to utilize technology. So how do we make sure that we're providing supports to families around troubleshooting pieces? Allocating funding to purchase additional digital resources that provide students with online reading material that is differentiated and or leveled. This was an identified need. And also providing supports for our English learners. So what additional resources are available in order to focus on the acceleration of language development? And lastly, improving the quality of Spanish interpretation at IEPs. This was something that was an ask as well. So how do we continue to build the capacity of the interpretation that is taking place? So continuity of instruction. When we're thinking about continuity of instruction, it focuses on in-person instructional offerings and distance learning. So when we're thinking about that, we're talking about what are our reopening plans? What are our preliminary plans as we think about bringing students back onto campus? So we continue to have ongoing discussions and conversations around the planning and preparation for the implementation of a hybrid model or a blended model with options for families to still continue with all online learning. So a hybrid model or blended model would include in-person instruction and remote learning experiences. So as we're thinking about those pieces, we have to take into account a version of a cohort strategy, right? Having a smaller group of students on campus and alternating between in-person and remote learning. The online learning experience at the elementary level would be distance learning. Very, very similar, if not similar to what we're experiencing today. At the secondary level, we continue to be in conversations and discussions around what is the virtual learning academy for secondary going to look like. We know that there are very different approaches to what this could entail. So we are continuing to engage in deeper conversations around what are those options and what is viable for us to implement as we think about the secondary version of online learning. And then what we're also doing is at the same time, as we've mentioned earlier today, the LA County Department of Public Health provided recent guidelines around cohorting of students. So they gave us guidance specifically around offering in-person services for students with IEPs and English learners. These services included one-on-one evaluations and assessments, and then the cohort strategy that has no more than 12 students and 2 adults. Now, this strategy is different than the hybrid option that we would be exploring. So this is a very specific and targeted opportunity for our English learners and students with special needs. So this is something that we are working on to implement in the immediate future with one-on-one assessments for special education, as Ms. Sinfield noted earlier on. And then in the short term, really looking at how are we going to be implementing the health and safety protocols in order to bring small groups of cohorts, not exceeding 12 students and 2 adults, to campus for our highest need students that receive special education services and English learners. So really looking at implementing a tiered approach to bring students back on campus for that in-person instruction and focusing in on our specialized education programs to begin with in that particular space. We want to make sure that, as I mentioned before, really looking at implementing all of the health and safety protocols and collaborating with all of our stakeholder groups in developing those and ensuring that we are providing a space where students are receiving the highest quality learning experience while maintaining the health and safety at the center of our planning. And then submitting all of the documentations that outlines the locations and the students that are being served. So there are very, very stringent guidelines and requirements that we need to fulfill on our end in order to be able to bring cohorts of students to receive this in-person instruction. So more information will be coming to our families in relationship to those options. So we will be providing updates as that develops.
Dr. Moore, can I just add a little bit, because I think this is important, and I need to be, I need everybody to really have clarity around this, the challenge we have here. So that way we're not under any illusion of what we can do, possibly do or not do. The reopening, when we go into that red category, as I mentioned earlier, and for those of you that are new to the meeting, you know, we go through just different stages. We're in the purple stage right now. And then when we go into, at some point, we'll transition it as a county to red stage. At the red stage, school districts can reopen in person. But the idea they're in person, when we come back in person, there are some strict protocols that we have to adhere to. 6-foot distancing, people wearing face masks, protective equipment for staff and for so many different things. So you're wondering why you even talk about hybrid. 99.99% of districts are using that to be able to come back in person. Okay, because you cannot fulfill those protocols with 6-foot distancing and all that if you have the full class that you would normally have. So the idea of the hybrid is that you split the classroom in half. If you have 30 students in a class, you split that in half. So you have 15 students one day and 15 students another day. Those measures will allow us to be able to stage the classrooms, the hallways, and everything we need to do to make sure that we adhere to what the county office is saying. So I need everybody to understand that logistically what has to happen for us to be able to come back in person, right? So, and there is no way around that piece unless we just stay distance learning only. Obviously, we're going to be engaging in more conversation about how this can happen. It becomes a lot more complicated at the high school level to match the teaching needs with that, because I sent a letter home to a community explaining the complications of that. And so I just want everybody to understand that. Us having this in place is a way of demonstrating to the state that, or the county, that we actually serious about, if we are able to come back, that we are actually serious about implementing the protocols. And hybrid is one option, but the hybrid has complications, so we have to address, and particularly at the secondary. And if it becomes too much for our community to accept the hybrid as is, obviously we're going to try to mitigate what the areas or people are stressed out about. But if it becomes that much, then we have to make a decision at some point to say, do we stay distance or do we come back in person? But we will ask the community about what their preference is based on everything we have in place to mitigate the stresses that people are engaged in. So I'm speaking to this because I don't want anybody thinking that a final decision is made here with this plan right now. We know that that's an issue with some people, and we have to continue to engage in ways to mitigate those areas where people are stressed out about. And then at some point we make a decision, and we just live by that. So
Yes.
Thank you. And then one last thing, and then I'm sorry. So the bullet point you see for the reopening is when we go into the red, when the county has opened up for schools to come back and in a safe way. The latter bullet points that Dr. Murray described are things that we can do now, even within the purple stage that Dr. Mora, Mrs. Dr. Powell, and sorry, I'm drawing a blank, and Mrs. Sinfield described to you earlier in the superintendent's report. So I want to kind of give you that context.
No, thank you so much for that, Dr. Dradi. Again, it's important that we are able to articulate what are the guidelines and what are the plans, what's the framework that we have within our learning continuity plan, and state that we are still continuing to refine as we move forward and as new information is presented to us. So again, we have to be open and willing to evolve as we engage in deeper conversations around moving into in-person instruction when the time comes and we are in that red phase. So as part of preparing for the reopening of schools and for in-person instructions, whether it's one-on-one assessments or the small cohorts of 12 students who have been identified as English learners or who are receiving special education services, there are health and safety protocols that we have to follow and that we have to prepare for. So we have been working diligently. Our nurses have been working collaboratively and diligently in developing protocols that are specific to our district. Dr. Kelly has been instrumental in facilitating this work, as well as Ms. Tara Brown and Ms. Susan Braunstein, working on really honing in and staying up to date on the changes that are being presented every week to us around these pieces. We've also ordered and received personal protective gear for staff and students, and we continue to place orders so that we have this available as needed. We have additional cleaning supplies that have been funded and have been purchased. Touchless temperature scanners, plexiglass, and signage has been displayed. We are continuing to receive plexiglass and ordering it in order to make sure that whatever direction we go in for the reopening of schools, we have the necessary equipment to meet the needs. We also have ordered hand washing stations, and we've allocated funding for additional hours for our custodial staff. So you'll see that within the plan itself, we've highlighted how all these the funding source for all of these items, and it's being utilized through the CARES funding that has been allocated to our district. So then we're thinking about our distance learning program, what we are experiencing at this moment in time. So our distance learning program is a combination of synchronous and asynchronous sessions. Synchronous learning happens live in real time through approved online platforms. For us, it's Google Classroom, Seesaw, Zoom, and Screencastify. So our students and teachers are utilizing Screencastify if they're preparing pre-recorded videos, but our teachers and students are using Google Classroom, Seesaw, and Zoom for those synchronous and asynchronous experiences. So synchronous is, as you've known, is defined as a student or a group of students engaged in learning at the same time using technology that allows our teachers and our students to connect, right? And for us, it's also allowing our peers, our students to connect during these experiences. Asynchronous instruction is not simultaneous or concurrent in time. So we've also focused in on the guaranteed and viable curriculum and monitoring of student learning. So I shared earlier that our teachers have come together as district grade level and or department teams to identify those essential learning standards and those critical areas in our curriculum guides to make sure that we're building coherence in learning expectations during distance learning and or in-person learning. So really the focus is how do we delve deeper into those essential concepts and support our students by developing meaningful, relevant experiences within this particular modality. And our teachers have been collaborating and working tirelessly to ensure that our students are having these experiences within the classroom. Our teachers are using assessments at the start of the year to determine student performance levels and identify those areas of need, particularly the areas of English language arts and mathematics. So our teachers are using our diagnostic assessments, formative and interim assessments throughout the year. So really making sure that we are checking in on how our students are progressing and adjusting instruction and delivery in order to meet those needs. So as part of our teaching and learning redesign group and our distance learning guideline for families, we developed common school and teacher agreements. And this is just an example of what is included within our distance learning guidelines. So we made a commitment to have a schedule that established daily and weekly routines for our students. We committed to having weekly communication with students and families regarding their learning outcomes for the week, monitoring daily attendance and participation for all students, making sure that our students are able to connect, and if there are barriers that are surfacing, being able to connect them and follow up with them to make sure that they have what they need so that they have access to the learning experience. Making sure that we're providing that daily live virtual instruction for all students. Not only connecting with the teacher, but as I mentioned, connecting with peers to develop those social relationships and build a stronger sense of community. Also providing asynchronous work for students. That way they're utilizing not only the digital platforms, but are having the opportunity to step away and develop projects and or work on various paper pencil assignments. And lastly, monitoring and providing interventions. So making sure that we are monitoring student progress and work completion and providing small group instruction opportunities for our students so that they can master essential content. And this is truly what our teachers have been doing and have been implementing. They have been working with small groups, providing that really targeted instruction in order to meet the varying needs of our students, and have been making adjustments in order to address any barriers that might be coming up for families and students during these these initial weeks of implementation. So our teachers have been hard at work, and our administrators have been supporting throughout this entire process. The next area really focuses on access to devices and connectivity. So thinking about, do students have a device at home that they can use? So we have been able to distribute devices to students that indicated that they were in need. We also distributed hotspots to families who requested those. What we've noticed is that the needs are changing constantly, right? The needs for families as we continue to experience physical school closures and the impacts of the pandemic, the needs for our families change. Initially, they may have not needed hotspots or devices, and now all of a sudden they do. So we have to make sure that we are being nimble and are able to make sure that we're fulfilling the needs of our families that could change from day to day, week to week. So what we're asking families is if the needs change for them and their children, to please communicate with their school so that we are able to provide them with the device and or the hotspot that is needed. We've also have allocated funding to purchase additional Chromebooks to replace student devices that are not functioning. As I highlighted before, this was a suggestion and a request from our committee. So that's why it's highlighted in blue, because it's something that just surfaced and it was an ask. There's also been a request to purchase of laptops to replace teacher devices that are not functioning properly. So you'll be able to see that there's been an allocation for these two particular pieces, as well as hotspots within the plan itself. And then for resources for families, what our ed tech team has done, and under the direction of Ms. Roman, her and her team have been working tirelessly to support our students, families, and our teachers with connectivity and access. And what we've done in order for families to be able to receive support is that we've created what's called what's called a tech email address, a tech support email for each of the school sites. So what we are asking our families to do is, if they have an ed tech need, to email their school support email address for any tech needs that they may have. And our tech assistants will respond and do their very best to address those needs. So you should have access to this at your site, but it is linked to the presentation, which is linked to the agenda, so that way you have this available to you. So that if you are finding that your hotspot is not working, that you're having difficulties with your device, please follow up and send an email to our support team, and they will reach out to address your need. Then when we're thinking about student participation and progress, what we've been doing is ensuring that our families have the information that they need in order to access daily live interaction during distance learning. So making sure that students are able to, that first and foremost, they know that the expectation is for them to log in to participate on a daily basis. So it's Google Classroom, Seesaw, and/or Zoom. These are the 3 platforms that students would be connecting through in order to participate in distance learning. Knowing where they need to upload any assignments so that they can receive credit for their work and their participation. And then lastly, knowing that logging in is part of your participation, So we need to make sure that students are checking in and connecting with their teacher. If you're finding that you're having difficulties with connectivities and your student was not able to log in, please follow up and let your teacher know or your school site know, so that we can support and we can make that note within our own documents. We know that sometimes technology glitches, and that sometimes the internet access fails. So we are here to support one another, and communication is definitely key in being able to address the needs that are arising throughout this time. So also, as part of that participation and progress, we have to make sure that we're maintaining participation and engagement records. So maintaining attendance, making sure that students are completing those assignments, and making sure that we have grades and postage so that students and families know where students are at and what needs to be completed. Our teachers also have to assign time value to the work that is being given to students. So that way they know about how much time it will take to complete. We're also implementing our assessment continuum, which is inclusive of diagnostic assessments, and those are district-wide, right? And that is an assessment that we're implementing at the beginning of the year to really determine the areas of need for students. So what are those areas that we want to focus in on, and make sure that we're building in or pre-teaching or reteaching as we're developing lessons throughout our days and the weeks, so that we can address any areas of need that are surfacing as a result of those diagnostic assessments. So we have those assessments for English language arts and math that currently are being implemented at our different school sites. We also have formative assessments, and those are site-based. So teachers are developing those through exit tickets, Google Forms, assignments that they might be providing students, performance tasks that they may have. So those are all pieces that teachers are developing, and in order to monitor and see how students are progressing and what adjustments they need to make to their practice. Common assessments are also site-based, so grade level teams or department teams work together to not only, one, identify those essential learning outcomes as part of our guaranteed viable curriculum, but also to determine how are they going to be assessing how students are doing, right? Being able to develop common assessments, administer them, and then come together to see how students are learning and how they're progressing and what adjustments they need to make along the way to, one, address any learning needs, and two, enrich, provide enrichment opportunities for students that have demonstrated mastery of any essential standards. And then lastly, the interim assessments that we have as a district. Those are assessments that we will continue to implement in order to do our monitoring throughout the year. So not only do our teachers do their assessments within their grade level team in their own classrooms to see how are our students doing, we also want to see how we're doing as a larger learning community. How are our students progressing? All of our fifth grade students, how are they progressing in ELA? What are some areas of strength and what are some areas of need? And then how do we support them in that? What adjustments do we need to make as a whole? And then as respective school sites and our grade level teams. All of this information is with the focus of designing lessons, ultimately that address the learning needs of our students as measured by various data points, right? One data point does not tell the whole story. We need multiple data points and different ways of determining how our students are progressing not only during distance learning, but during teaching and learning as a whole. So we've also highlighted professional development within our learning continuity plan. So for us, you'll see that was one of the commitments that we made as part of our teaching and learning redesigning working group. We identified embedded professional learning time in the day on Tuesdays for our secondaries, on Thursdays for our elementary teams, in order to focus in on areas of priority and areas of identified need by our teaching team. So what you see before you are the various themes and topics that we are focusing in this year. So continuing with restorative justice, that's a priority for us. It really supports us in the development of a climate and culture within our classrooms that is values-based and really supports us in being able to resolve any conflict, but really grounded on developing common values and establishing agreements within our learning community. The use of project-based learning to create meaningful and relevant experiences for students that help them to connect what they're learning within this distance learning platform to life outside of this realm. The integration of the social justice standards within all content areas is also an area of focus. Social emotional learning, as you saw, that was one of the very first themes that emerged from our data pieces, right? Really focusing in on the social emotional piece. So many of our embedded PD offerings focus in this area. They focus on social emotional learning, mindfulness in the classroom. How do we utilize those strategies to support students in being in the present moment and lowering any anxiety or stress that they may be feeling that we know will impact their ability to engage meaningfully in a learning experience. Also utilizing trauma-informed classrooms and those strategies in order to address the basic needs of our students and lower effective filters and support them in learning. And last but not least, providing these learning opportunities through the integration of technology. So for our team as Ed Services, how are we modeling for our team the use of technology, the integration of technology within the experiences that we are offering through professional development? So really honing in on leveraging those platforms that we have adopted as a district, maximizing them and supporting our teachers in their use through our own implementation of these platforms. So for our increased and improved services for our English learners, we really honed in on the daily social emotional learning lessons. So this is something that you will see at the elementary and secondary level. There was a commitment by our teachers to really begin their days with social emotional learning. It could be a 30-minute lesson, a 15-minute lesson, a 10-minute lesson, depending on the grade span, but really the secondary teams. But at the elementary, there was a commitment for a 30-minute lesson that they can then determine if it needed to be broken up to provide a 15-minute lesson in the morning and then maybe 15 minutes in the afternoon to regroup students. The most important thing to remember at this point is the commitment for social emotional learning, the building of community, the development of relationships with students and teachers, and between students and teachers and among students as well. So that has been a priority and a focus for us. We also highlighted additional small group instruction during the day by the classroom teacher. You will see these pieces resurfacing across all of the areas, specifically for our unduplicated students. These were commitments that were delineated and identified by our teaching and learning redesign group. So these really stemmed from conversations, from all of those conversations that we had during this, from May to August, around how could we support and address the needs of our unduplicated students. So we also highlighted additional one-on-one or small group support for students during office hours and or support or flex time, depending on how it's called out at the secondary, providing before or after school intervention and or academic support. And this is the space where the request was, can we be flexible? If our teachers are not available to do this, how can we think outside the box in order to still provide this service to our students? We're going to continue funding literacy and language interventionists to provide supplemental ELD, for our 4th and 5th grade students that are at risk of becoming long-term English learners. That continues to be an area of focus for us, as well as providing bilingual instructional assistance at the secondary level to support students throughout the day. And then you see an item in blue, which is supplemental digital instructional materials to support language development. So that was feedback that we received. So we've included that, and you'll see that called out within the plan. We're still working on identifying that resource, but we are really excited to be able to move forward with that if and when the plan is approved. For our low income students, again, you'll see many of the same strategies identified here. What you'll notice is that we have additional instructional materials and supplies for our students. So funding allocated so that we can purchase that for students and make sure that they have what they need in order to engage in distance learning. Also, the continued funding of student outreach specialists at Samo High to support our at Promise students, to connect with them and identify what are their needs in order to ensure that they are finding success. Our language and literacy interventionists provide 3rd through 5th grade students additional small group intensive support in reading for Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. So that will continue to be something that we are offering as we continue in distance learning and beyond. And also, there was a need for additional digital resources that provide differentiated or leveled reading materials. So really looking at how can we provide that at PK-12 or TK-12 for all of our students, so that teachers have access to those resources to augment their practice, and that students can also access those at home. For our homeless and foster youth, we really wanted to hone in on making sure that they're receiving all of the additional supports delineated for our other targeted groups, but also looking at how can we provide additional mental health services to students that are that are experiencing homelessness or that are foster youth. Also, our outreach specialists at Samo High can continue to support our students in connecting them with services, and then they will also benefit from any additional digital resources to provide additional reading materials at home. And when we're thinking about the supports for pupils with unique needs, particularly when we're thinking about students that receive special education services, we have made a commitment to provide supports for our students during this distance learning time, to really make sure that we are working collaboratively to provide small group or individual sessions for students in order to support them in accessing their distance learning experience. All of our related services providers have been working with our classroom teachers to develop a schedule of services, not only with teachers, but also with families, in order to address and mitigate any challenges that might be surfacing as a result of trying to adjust to this new way of learning. We're also ensuring that we are implementing all of the health and safety protocols so that when we launch this coming week, everything is in place. So Ms. Sinfield, along with the special education team, has been working extensively on developing all of those protocols and ensuring that everything is in place so that, as she mentioned, our psychologists can begin with the assessment, and then we can support our teachers in being able to fulfill those pieces as well. as the signups continue to take place. And also refining our plan to implement the cohort strategy to bring back our specialized programs in a tiered approach. So we will continue to partner with our families and with the various departments within our learning community to ensure a smooth transition as possible as we engage in the plan of bringing students back on a one-to-one basis, and then on a small cohort basis when we are ready to move in that direction. So pupil learning loss. This is something that we have been thinking about and addressing with first and foremost the implementation of our assessment continuum. So how do we address any areas of need that our students may have, and any learning needs that may have resulted as caused by the physical school closures as this transition and adjustment to distance learning. So as I've mentioned before, we have our assessment continuum with various assessments that we are utilizing throughout the year. But at this point, it's our diagnostic assessments that will be giving us the information we need in order to support our students. I know our teachers have been working extensively and coordinating those sessions with their students in order to identify strengths, areas of need, and develop goals for them on how to continue to move forward. And as we're thinking about how do we meet the needs of our students, we're addressing this in a multi-tiered approach. So our tier 1, first and foremost, all of our students are receiving standards aligned instruction. And that has been first and foremost developed through the guaranteed viable curriculum guidelines that we have, and the essential standards that have been identified by our elementary teachers and our secondary teachers. And then developing that first strong instruction, and within that space also providing small group support to students in order to address any areas of need that may have surfaced as a result of this transition into distance learning. Tier 2 then is providing additional support to students that focuses in on specific skill development. So this would be provided by the classroom teacher within their given instructional block and or period at the secondary level. The elementary level, we continue to have, as I mentioned earlier, our literacy and language interventionists that provide additional supplemental instruction in ELD and or reading. So that will continue with our tier 2. Tier 3 is more intensive support. So this really speaks to that one-on-one sessions that would be taking place during office hours and or flex support time at the secondary level. So this is for students that need that additional intensive support and one-on-one guidance in order to address any of their needs. We're also looking at that additional support staff to provide supplemental instruction in reading. At the elementary, we have that with our literacy and language interventionists. And then looking at the extended learning opportunities before and after school. So really thinking outside of the box. If our teachers are not available to do that, we completely understand because of everything that they are engaged in during this time. So how can we explore other options to provide that support to our students? And then in the area of mental health and social emotional well-being, we first and foremost are providing the daily lessons and activities on social emotional learning that is being provided by the classroom teacher. So this was a commitment that our teaching and learning group at the elementary, middle, and high school, this was something that they all agreed on as a priority in opening and continuing with distance learning instruction for this year. We also allocated additional funding to provide individual and group counseling services for students and families. So this is above and beyond what's called out in the increased and improved services. We've allocated additional funding for these pieces. We're also looking and ensuring that we're leveraging our community partnerships to increase mental health services to students, And also to really look at how we are supporting the physical well-being and providing resources to our staff and our families. We know that we all need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and each other in order to be able to be successful in supporting our students. Also looking at how are we providing those wraparound supports for our families to ensure they have all of their basic, that they have their basic needs met and are able to access not only those resources, but then access the academic experiences that are being provided by our teachers. And within the mental health and social emotional well-being space, we are, as I mentioned earlier, focusing in on restorative justice, trauma-informed classrooms, and mindfulness as key strategies to support the social emotional well-being of our students and staff. For pupil engagement and outreach, the state has a very clear expectation around student attendance. So if students have missed 3 school days in a week, which is 60% of instructional days, we are required to make sure that we are connecting with families to verify that we have their current contact information to determine what are the barriers that are impacting their ability to connect and finding out what resources they need and connecting them to those health and or social services within our community. And to support this piece, our Student Services Department has developed a multi-tiered approach and contact for re-engagement. So really looking at our classroom teacher as the first touch point. And if students are not connecting, reaching out to families. But if their teachers have reached out and there's no connection, then really thinking about what support staff do we have that can assist us in reaching out to families if that initial connection by the teacher did not result in being able to determine what those needs are. So our attendance clerks at our school sites, with support from our bilingual community liaisons, if there is a language access need, can really hone in and address and begin to be that second layer of support to reach out to families. If we're finding that that's challenging, then how can we connect at the secondary level with our counselors, advisors, and our student outreach specialists to really build out and target how can we connect with families? What are those areas of need? And how can we pull those resources? And lastly, I know that our administrators, our principals, assistant principals, house principals have also taken initiative to make phone calls to connect with families to find out what is happening so that we can address those needs. And also looking at how we are utilizing the processes that we have in place. For us, that's the SARB process. But really looking at it from a lens of supporting, not as a punitive process and experience, but really thinking about how can we help our families? What are their needs? Seeking to understand what are the challenges that they're facing and what we can do to support them. In relationship to school nutrition, our food nutrition department has been hard at work and truly supporting all of our families in this time of need with food insecurity. So they've been able to continue providing the service to families through the summer. And now once we return to distance learning, they are continuing to provide services for families. So we are having 2 meals provided a day. Breakfast and lunch can be picked up at 7:30 to 9:30. They are grab and go experiences. So that way we are making sure that we are maintaining as little physical contact as possible and honoring all of the health and safety protocols. Our 4 locations continue to be Santa Monica High, McKinley Elementary, Rogers, and Webster Elementary. And then I wanted to bring us to our projected budget. So as Dr. Dradi mentioned earlier on, we are receiving CARES funding. So, but the first bucket that you see here is our supplemental grant. So we received $4.8 million in order to increase and improve services for students. So you'll be able to see within the learning continuity plan, the various actions and services that fulfill the increased and improved services percentage for the unduplicated students. but we also received the CARES funding. We received the elementary, secondary school emergency relief, which is the second row here. And what you can see is that we received $935,547. But what you'll notice is in the parentheses, this is the funding that has been allocated specifically for us as a district. This particular funding source, we have to make sure that we're fulfilling the equitable services requirement, which means that we need to make sure that we're allocating a certain dollar amount for private schools within our district boundaries. So because of that, there is a reduction in the allocation that we are able to use as a learning community. So we have $644,363 that we are able to utilize in order to support all of the reopening and all of the needs that have surfaced as a result of distance learning and the physical school closures. The second funding source that you see is the CARES Learning Loss Mitigation Fund, excuse me. The Learning Loss Mitigation Fund, what we've been allocated is $5,512,721. But again, you see in parentheses, an estimate of what we will have. Within this particular funding source, there is the equitable services requirement for one of the various buckets that make up the Learning Loss Mitigation Fund. So this is at this point an estimate of what we'll have from the $5,512,721. So that is what we have, the estimate we have at this point. I'm still waiting to hear back from CDE regarding the particular dollar amount for the equitable services distribution for our private schools, and that will be updated once I receive it. So this next slide gives you an overview of the various buckets. So you're seeing the elementary and secondary school relief emergency fund. You see the distribution formula for us, the state allocation, and then our allocation, SMMUSD and private school allocation. So you'll see what was allocated to us as a district, the resource code. This is just what distinguishes this particular funding source. And then it lets you know if we are required to allocate or set aside funds for equitable services. And you'll see that for the ESSER, we are required to set aside funding for private school allocation as a part of the equitable services piece. We have an expenditure deadline of September 30th, 2022 to utilize these funds. Now the next bucket is the Learning Loss Mitigation Fund. So this is the next funding source that we have, and it's made up of three smaller funding sources: the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and the State General Fund. So when we add all of these allocations for SMMUSD in the private schools, that's where I totaled the $5.5 million. But you can see that the GEAR, the Governor's Emergency Fund, we have an equitable services piece that we have to provide. So this is where the estimate is. So we've been allocated $613,655. And at this point, I've estimated what the equitable services allocation is going to be, and I'm waiting to hear back from CDE on that piece. But you'll also be able to see that for the Corona Relief Fund and the State General Fund, there is no equitable contribution. So we are able to retain this entire dollar amount to support us with any of the reopening and or distance learning expenditures that we are seeing. So what we will be able to do, I wanted to also share that at this point, we've received part of the allocation of the ESSER and the full allocation of the Corona Relief Fund. And I think it was, the full partial implementation, the full allocation, pardon me, of the Corona Relief Fund, and we're still waiting for the other two funding sources for us. And then I wanted to just address our next steps. right? So as I shared at the very onset of our conversation, I am sharing with you the preliminary learning continuity plan. So what will happen after this presentation is I will need to make any necessary adjustments based on any feedback that I receive from the board in relationship to any of the pieces that have been delineated. I will then bring that back next week on September 24th for board adoption. And then I need to submit it to the Los Angeles County Office of Education no later than September 30th. I have also submitted a draft plan to them to get any feedback so that I can make sure that I am addressing any of their questions in regards to the various components of the plan, and then be able to submit it by September 30th. After they receive the approved plan from the board, they will then do a final review and send any commentary to us. And then we will need to make any revisions or present an update to the board in regards to what suggestions they gave to us. And at this point, I open it up for any comments or suggestions from the board.
Great, if you could just.
The only thing I would add is, this is a part of the input process, right? And so so that's why this whole thing is preliminary at this point. And we still got a lot more to do, but this is a part of the input process.
So I know I've already been reached out to for some clarifying questions. Before we do that, I want to formally open the public hearing. So if I could have a motion to do that, please. Moved by Ralph, seconded by Lori. Roll call, Richard. Richard,
Where are you?
I'll come back to Richard. Ralph?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Myself. Richard, are you back? He might have stepped out. So that's 6-0. We're open. The public meeting is now open. I want to go to clarifying questions before public comment. I know Lori already reached out to me with one clarifying question. So Lori?
Okay. I mean, I just have to open with one comment, which leads into the clarifying question. My comment is that I now understand more about what the learning continuity and attendance plan is about, and it seems like what you've done is an incredibly thorough and comprehensive job explaining all the many aspects that are being addressed in our district by teachers, by counselors, by mental health professionals, by everybody who has a role to play in all the different pieces. And I think it's important that everybody recognize that, because I think some of us have been seeing some forums that those who are running for school board have to speak at, and you get the feeling like people think we don't do anything here, or that no, but they don't. I mean, it's a black box and people don't know what's going on. So if anyone wants to know, they should read your presentation or listen to this or whatever. And I do think some of this ought to be highlighted somewhere on the district website in a way that people could look for things that they want to know about. So that will require a little bit of maybe Sarah indexing kinds of things. But all that is to say, all of that stuff is enormously important, and it is the work of the district, and it reflects an enormous amount of work, Dr. Mora, on your part, which I really appreciate. And I think my question goes to has to do with what I think is the confusion out there in the community, which largely has very little to do with much of what you presented, which was it just incredibly comprehensive. So I want to kind of take a stab at a way of asking you whether you would look at it this way. I was thinking that it's as if there are two things that are going on right now in parallel. One of them started when you had to draft this plan for LACO, and you've had different end dates where that things were required. They've changed it. Things have changed. The circumstances change. We go from purple to red. Oh no, but we're in purple. All the various things that have been touched on tonight. And you've meanwhile had to kind of navigate that and help our district, and teachers and people who work in our district have had to kind of move with that and provide all the things you're providing. And at the same time, while you're doing what is a large plan that must be submitted by a certain date to LACO, at the same time, we are now sitting 3 weeks into a distance learning school year. And we are now, even though you have to submit a plan in order to get CARES funds, which will help us however we proceed in all of this, the discussion has really, in a way, just begun in the community among parents, especially among teachers, about, well, when we go back, what will it really look like? Are we really, are the models that we looked at in the spring really the only models that we can look at in the future? And I guess I think you want to be saying that we will be having an ongoing discussion and looking at exploring different kinds of models and variations on the models that we've looked at before. But what is confusing people out there is that you've got to also file this plan within the next couple of weeks. And we won't have had the opportunity to take surveys, take input in various forms, have vibrant discussions, have serious explorations of things we have only just begun thinking about, like the things that the PTA Council discussed, which I'm sure we can talk about later. So I know this is a long way of saying, can you clarify for people, if you think I'm right, that there's one process that is going on and it's legitimate and it's comprehensive and it's about everything we're doing as we move forward in this COVID climate and the many things we do to provide learning continuity. And yet there is also, some of the parts in there are not written in stone, they are not final, and there is going to be an ongoing discussion that will be vibrant and an exploration in the upcoming period of what the possibilities are for when we do come back, which, as Dr. Drani said earlier, isn't likely to be before January.
So yes, this is just a snapshot, right, of what the process that we've engaged in that has gotten us to this point. And we need to continue to engage our teachers, our families, our community in unpacking this further and developing a more robust plan of action, and taking into consideration what are other viable options beyond just the ones that we have discussed. But I think, and it is true, we need to be able to present that we have had a plan, that we have had these conversations, and that we are working and preparing for the reopening, even if that model changes as we delve deeper into these conversations. The intention has always been to continue engaging in dialogue and in conversations, because we know things change, right? And it's going to require input from families, from teachers around how will we move forward as we receive greater clarity and guidance from the state as to when we are able to return to campus for in-person instruction. So this is our first formalized description of what those options are, or what those could be, knowing that and in the plan itself, I've written that we have to engage in ongoing conversations in order to make adjustments as needed and truly implement a plan of action that meets the needs of our communities and families and students.
I'm going to jump in here real quick and try to ask a clarifying question on the clarifying question. So Dr. Moore, I'll phrase this simply. The board has not given any direction on a hybrid learning model.
Mm-hmm.
So based on what you and Dr. Dradi have said tonight, we will be able to explore any option moving forward until proved unfeasible, meaning we could explore options of hybrid with synchronous, this or that. We can explore anything at this point. We have not decided on anything yet, and we will still be driven by the limitations of the health departments, but we will not be limited by our imaginations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yes, we can still develop and engage in those conversations and figure out what's going to be the best way to meet the needs of our community, of our families, of our students.
Terrific. Because there was so much info in that report. I know when we talked about instruction, it was like on Tuesday. But thank you for that, all that information. Maria, do you have a clarifying question?
Yes.
Okay.
Just one other aspect of it. I understand what you presented tonight, but I guess what a lot of the issues resulted was the fact that the last survey that was issued and then pulled away quickly. So it kind of left people more confused. So can you, Dr. Dradi or Dr. Mora, clarify where we are? Because I know that, and we got a humongous amount of emails from that thinking, oh, we're not going to do this. And it's almost like there was already specific detail given or options in that survey without really having an overall discussion about potential.
Yes. Yes.
So they were just throwing out like these are the options instead of these can be potential options.
Yeah. And I use that as a learning opportunity to first and foremost, two things were happening at once. We're working to adjust the current setup we have, which is distance learning. At the same time, there's no way we could take our foot off of what's off the gas in preparing for the eventual time we're going to come back. So if you think about it, our days, my days, the cabinet's days are all invested in two things happening at once, which is how do you solidify distance learning, now that we have it going. In the meantime, simultaneously working to put everything in place in the case of when we come back. That survey was a part of the latter, which is, okay, because if you remember in the past, although you guys, we never considered hybrid as an option, because we did consider it, but we somewhat abandoned it because the state came down and said no one is going to open. Mm-hmm. All the while, we knew that was always going to be there. So that message went out because in my mind, it was a continuation of a conversation we had all summer. Because if you remember, all the presentations we had were Model A, if for those that remember. I know it's tough to remember back in the day, but there was a Model A in which we had students coming back, and then a Model B, which is the hybrid that everybody's been talking about. And with those components of the hybrid, in our mind, in Cabinet's mind, in my mind, I would say, we were thinking people remember all those conversations and we're just continuing the conversation, and it didn't. So when we quickly recognized that hold up, people don't remember, they still focused on distance learning, whereas we at district office, myself, were 3 or 4 steps ahead trying to figure out what we do next. So that's where the confusion lied. This is the reason why I pulled it. I asked everybody to pull this based on the chatter I was hearing out there. But it does not mean that we don't continue to engage in this conversation. We then figured out, let's have this conversation to bring everybody on the same page before we start processing, moving forward on what the next steps are going to be. So learning part, in my part, I've got to, you know what, people are in so many different places. I'm in a different place based on my vantage point. And I think it's about, I just got to remember what people do remember and what they experienced previously, and then we really have that context before something like that goes out. But let me just add this. Eventually, there will have to be another survey coming out to address this. So,
but Ben, you do have plans to put out a survey prior to that to sort of gauge how parent student satisfaction.
Absolutely. Remember, and that was always the plan. We remember we're in the 3rd week. My commitment was the 4th week. That's still next week. So remember, I in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we got to focus on reopening. I understand that, this is the learning part. What's the next step? Or we got to do a survey. So that's coming next week. So all this is happening all at once. But I got to remember that community is not in my mind. They're, they're in different places.
Dr. Morris said those funds ran out in September 30th, 2022. I was like, wait, what year is it now? This is 21? Like, it's been a crazy couple months. So thank you all for the work you've been doing to get us to this point. I haven't been reached out for any other clarifying, so I think we should hear from our public now. We have 5 public comments, and then we can have a discussion on this. So Lori, do you want to take over for public comment?
Yes. We have 5 public comments, and each of you will have 3 minutes to speak. The first 3 speakers are Chris Lefebvre, Julie Rousseau, and Gabrielle Cohen.
Am I up?
You are.
All right, 3 minutes fly by, so I'll go as efficiently as I can. I'm really here to raise the alarm, you guys. 6 months with our kids behind screens, 6 months with kids impacted by the social, the emotional, the academic repercussions of this pandemic and of the way we've handled it. But before that, I wanted to bring a few points up from what Dr. Dradi, you shared at the beginning. You went through the statewide color system, which is very clear. I had done my research prior as well. And you explained that when we are in purple, we can apply for elementary schools to reopen. But then you said LA County will not accept applications. I would like to know why, and what is the driving force behind that?
Yeah, no, am I supposed to answer these questions? Or?
Mr. Lefebvre, if you could finish your public comment, and then normally we don't respond right away, but that's a valid point that Ben can clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other thing that I noticed and I would like to have clarification on is you did mention the cohorts, which in principle is great. We're all about, I think, small pods going back to school. I advocate for starting with kindergarten ages up. And you mentioned that Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District staff would be going first before higher needs families, including homeless kids and special needs. I'd like to know why as well. What is the urgency for SMM USD staff over homeless kids or foster kids, when my understanding is that the majority of staff don't want to go back to school? And then the third thing, Dr. Moore, you clarified some of it. I do think it's important for us as parents to know what those protocols for safety and sanitation will be. Things like what products are going to be used. We are asking for details around that as we get closer to opening, particularly again, for me, around the smallest kids first and making our way up. But I mentioned that my main point is to raise an alarm. I'm extremely concerned about what's happened over the last 6 months and the fact that we are still months away from bringing our kids back into in-person education. It's been 6 months since we've shut doors, since we've taught our children that staying at home is the safest place and thing that they can do. To my knowledge, we are one of the only parts of the world that have locked doors for this long and that are still months away from bringing them back. We're also one of the only parts of the world, in my knowledge, that have decided that we needed to mask children 2 years old against the WHO advice. So I'm encouraging everyone to listen to medical expertise and to start questioning what's been happening in our community, because as much as I completely understand that the older people are and the larger the groups and indoor spaces, I also think we need to be realistic about the science, about the data, and I will advocate for us to not impose drastic sanitation measures for kids who are very unlikely to get sick or transmit sickness.
Speaker's time is up.
Okay. And if you can accommodate those of us who need to get back to school soon, give us the option to opt out for a sabbatical year, just like families who cannot go back to school are given the option for online learning for quite a bit of time ahead of us. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. And can I urge you to, if you have additional comments and questions, please feel free to email and the more complete version.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to give the one piece of clarity on that, normally we don't have discussion on public comment, but you did mention, just for the point of information, on the waivers. The LA County Department of Health said they will not accept any waivers at this time. So we are following the government authorities that oversee what we do. So as soon as LA County Department of Public Health says waivers can be submitted for elementary in person, we will be able to do so.
I heard that, but I didn't hear why.
Okay.
My understanding is they did not want, and I'm in phone conversations with the health department on a weekly basis. In fact, we were today. The whole thing was about when they decided to bring back the cohorts of students, they replaced that with the waiver. And what you'll note is in your research, you seem like you keeping up to date with this. You will see other counties have a different approach. Like Orange County is going to be accepting waivers, whereas LA County is not. So just for anybody out there, you'll see districts outside of LA doing things different. And that can be very frustrating. But I want to go back to what Mr. Keene just said right now. I can't defy the county health department or LA County.
And they made the decision to prioritize the highest need students, most at-risk students,
yes,
for the first set of waivers, which we have applied for.
Yes.
We have done all that. So the students in most need are the ones being prioritized right now. All right, thank you so much. Sorry, Lori. I'm sorry, sorry, Chris. Look, my email is on the website, jkeene@smm. Shoot me an email, we'll talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Julie Rousseau and then Gabrielle Cohen.
Hi guys, apparently the host is saying that it says I can't start. You can't start your video, your host. Okay, start my video.
There you go.
All right, hang on. Okay, I'm just launching. I'm a proud graduate of Santa Monica High School, class of '92, graduate of John Adams Middle School, and graduate of John Muir Elementary. I love Santa Monica, and I have lived here for 41 years of my 46. Never in my wildest imagination did I think that I would ever be telling the board members of the Santa Monica School District that they are failing the children enrolled in the Santa Monica Public Schools. But I am here today to tell you exactly that. As educators, you have all worked hard at making parents more mindful, educated, and aware of the dangerous effects of screen time with children. You have all been consistent advocates for reading, for writing, for making art, music, anything other than screen time. You have all been highly trained to know well enough that screen time increases disengagement, complacency, and can indeed increase the risk of lower long-term academic performance and even whether learners advance in their academic career years later. And yet my 5-year-old kindergarten child has been imposed to watch a screen for 180 minutes per day, 5 days a week, which comes to a total of 3,240 minutes of screen time from the first day of school to today, which is 18 days. The normal amount of time I allow my children to use a screen is 30 minutes on Saturdays, which totals 540 minutes in the last 18 days. That is 2,700 minutes less than the hours they are currently imposed to be on their screens, to be considered participating in school. I'm not blaming the teachers as their hands are tied, but I am blaming the district for not providing support for children and families to get what they need in whatever way works best for them. I am asking that you greatly consider providing, 1, giving families the flexibility to opt out of live Zoom sessions and or administer curriculum independently and or grant a sabbatical so that families won't lose their spots, and 2, reduce the amount of daily screen time during live Zoom sessions. Providing a flexible schedule determines the success of a consistent learning environment for most families. In addition, focus on online education should not be on the quantity of minutes a day students spend in front of a screen, but rather the quality instruction and mastery of concepts. Trying to replicate the school day online is fundamentally the opposite of what researchers have concluded appropriate for online learning. A professor at Boise State University in Idaho, who has studied effective distance learning at the K-12 states, Carrie Rice, concluded in her research that, and I quote, "In short, online learning is a delivery modality that supports mastery of content, regardless of how short or long a student has been in a seat." And that quote, "In traditional classrooms, time is constant while learning is variable, versus in online classrooms, time is variable while the learning is constant." As educators, you must take this into consideration, otherwise you will continue to fail your students. And I find it shameful that nobody is fighting as hard as they can against the governor, against whoever they need to impose or to offer additional support outside of Zoom. It is
The speaker's time is up.
shameful.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ms. Rousseau. The next speaker is Gabrielle Cohen, and then we have Jennifer Brockett and Jay Fenderson.
Everyone, thank you. If you're not me yet, I just wanted to make a comment. I know that the school board, Dr. Dradi, Dr. Moore, you've all been receiving lots of emails with varying opinions, as have I. There are many parents who less screen time, as we just heard. There's many parents who want more screen time, more synchronous time. There really isn't one way to please everyone. And so first, I applaud you for all the hard work. It's hard to find that happy medium. But there was one other thing. We've been hearing so much lately about the teachers and how fatigued they are and how much they're struggling with this. And first, I just wanted to say that we're all with you. The parents are with you. We're struggling. Everybody in the world right now is struggling, trying to figure out how to do everything, how to rework their jobs. But I thought it was really important for the teachers to know that we can't tell you're struggling. And that says something about you and the hard work that you're doing. None of our students would ever know that you're having a bad day or that things aren't going well, because you're doing such a fabulous job teaching them. And we really appreciate it. And I just thought that that needed to be said, whatever this all turns out to be. And we will continue to give ideas and opinions and work together with the district to try and come up with plans that suit as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jennifer Brockett and then Jay Fenderson, and that'll conclude the public hearing on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberman. As you said, my name is Jennifer Brockett. I think you all know I have 2 students at Santa Monica High School. The first thing I want to say is that our experience this fall has been very much improved from the spring, and I really want to thank our teachers and counselors and site administrators who've worked so hard and done such a solid job of adjusting. That said, I also agree with the 2 parents who spoke at the outset about the need to work to reopen campuses, especially for younger students. And, you know, I submitted a pretty long letter today to the board and to Dr. Dradi, signed by 35 other parents of secondary students and myself. And I'm not going to repeat what's in that letter, but I do have a few questions after having seen the presentation tonight and read over the LCAP. And I hope that you ask these questions of Dr. Dradi and that these are resolved before the LCAP is finalized. So the first questions are about interacting with DPH. And it's not clear to me, because the LCAP plan was developed, because the hybrid plan that the LCAP plan links to was developed before DPH guidelines were issued, it does not comply with those DPH guidelines in many respects. And so we need to know, what changes are needed to the existing hybrid plan, if that's, still our top choice plan. What changes are needed to comply with DPH? DPH guidance requires that the district improve its air circulation. Why doesn't the LCAP include any provision for improving the air circulation? And does the district even have sufficient staff, space, and other resources to bring back all students for hybrid while complying with DPH guidelines? And if not, how will the district prioritize who returns and who does not? Second, at the July board meetings, several board members specifically discussed offering distance learning plus when that's permitted. And when I saw that the high school day ended at 2 p.m. and that Flex and Club were offered in the afternoon, I assumed that that was to make room for flex in the afternoon. So I'd like to know why the plan didn't take that direction provided by board members and include distance learning plus in the LCAP. And then, you know, last, the LCAP states that the district plans to offer middle and high school students the opportunity to choose between hybrid and a third-party online vendor, and the identified vendor is Apex. And I think there's a lot of questions swirling around that. You know, how was Apex chosen? What's the district experience with Apex? Does it provide daily live instruction as required by the education code? What is it charging per student? So there's just a whole lot around that, but you know, at the end of the day, I wondered, is my time up?
I cannot hear you. Sarah, is the time up?
Oh, yeah, right now. That's sorry. I muted myself early. I apologize. Yeah, your time is up.
Oh, thank you. I'll put the rest in a letter.
I have a question.
Oscar?
Yes. Can you finish your comments in terms of the suggestions that you want us to consider?
Yes, sure. If I can just take another 30 seconds, what I would want to see the district do is, as the county says, you know, prioritize returning based first for students of need, English learners, students with IEPs. Second, for the youngest students who I think are really suffering the most with the screen time, the K through second, and after that, you know, the rest of elementary school. So stage the return so that we know that we can do it and that we're getting the right students back in the classroom fastest. And then for my kids, the high school students and the middle school students, do implement distance learning plus, you know, have the students sign up for, you know, one activity a week that they get to do on campus. It's something they love, whether it's band or sports or debate, and have that be, you know, during the flex period. We have 5 afternoons a week. Let's use them. I think that's about as short as I can make it.
Thank you. And then the last speaker is Jay Fenderson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I first want to thank all of you. It's so clear from Dr. Mora's presentation that you have all put so much hard work into ensuring that we can have an educational learning environment for our children. So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank the 2 earlier parents, Julie, who advocated for the petition that I wrote last week. And I couldn't sum up anything as well as she did, so I won't repeat her. But I do want to say I'm a parent of a 2nd grader and a 4th grader at Roosevelt Elementary. My mom is a public school teacher, and so I'm hearing it from her, what she is going through over the past 6 months, and I'm experiencing it myself. And I hesitated to even write anything or start this petition because I've got 4 kids. Life is crazy right now. I'm working full time, and it's just really difficult. But what I'm seeing every day is heartbreaking, as I have to convince my kids to log into Zoom multiple times a day, and they're resisting it. And I've never heard them tell me before that they hate school, that they don't like math, that they don't want to read online. And it's difficult because I was raised by a public school teacher, and I am passionate about education. I am passionate about increasing opportunity and access. And so, and I don't feel like I have the bandwidth to take on this fight. And so what I'm asking for you school board members, for administrators for whom this is your paid job and position, is to really advocate for the health and well-being of our kids who are struggling with the screen time. I know that many families are happy with the current distance learning model, and I'm so happy for them. But it's not working for everyone. And I think what parents like myself and like others that I'm hearing are asking for is some flexibility and some options to the understanding that we know our kids. We're seeing them in between the times that you're seeing them online, and we're the ones that are having to be there to coach them and to encourage them and to mitigate all of the frustrations that they have. And so I thank you for hearing us. I want you to know that we love our teachers, and this isn't by no means a critique of our teachers. It's really just an ask to reduce the screen time and to give us some flexible options. And the last thing I'll add is, as a parent of multiple children, one of my daily frustrations is that my kids' lunch times are different. And so we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I have a difficulty trying to get them. You're hearing my 1-year-old right now who wants to go to bed. I have a difficulty getting them outside in the middle of the day. And with all the screen time that they're having, it's just so much more important. So one of the basic asks I have—
time is up.
Okay, thank you. Is to just align the lunch schedules across grade levels. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. John, that goes back to you. Oh, actually, I guess we need to.
Yeah, so
I
we
move
need
to
to
close the public
close
hearing.
the public hearing part of this item. So do I have a motion to close the?
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Richard. Is there a second? By Maria. Quick roll call. Richard.
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes.
Oscar.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so the public hearing is closed. Just to phrase this item, just for a second, this item will come back to us next week, which is when we'll approve it. If there are any board member comments or questions, we do have some time now to do that. If you have any direction for staff, this would be the time to do so. I see Oscar. Do I see anybody else who wants to get in the queue? Oscar, then Maria, and then Ralph.
First off, I just want to thank staff for putting together a very comprehensive report. I think Laurie talked about the comprehensiveness of the report, and it was a very good report. And these are challenging times, and I just ask that we reflect on the public comments that we heard today, and you know, the comments from our teachers. There's a lot of fatigue in many different areas, right? Parents, students, teachers. So anything that we can do to try to mitigate that, staff should hear that and come back with a plan to address those concerns. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Oscar. Maria, and then Ralph.
Well, no. Again, thank you, Dr. Mora. I understand that, you know, the overall comprehensiveness of the plan. I think Lori and I won't go over that. Lori and, you know, Oscar alluded to. But I guess the specific, that we need to have like more specific, there's a specificness in terms of some of the issues that are contained, or the points that are contained in the report. And mainly, I guess, the first point is that there was like some original confusion in terms of the plan, that it does address, the plan does address about what's happening now in distance learning, and then the plan in terms of how do we begin to reopen. So it's a two-pronged kind of plan. But I think the first and foremost, I think we have to look at it in terms of the present, which is the distance learning piece, and making sure that it's working well, that we give the support that we need to give to teachers, mainly teachers, because they're on the ground with the students and the families. And, you know, we've been hearing a lot in terms of they're being stressed out, and they're human too. So they've got their own personal lives that they have to deal with, and probably their own children, if their children, if they have school-age children too. So we need to take into consideration that, so that the plan, there's some pieces in the plan that's going to be there to help support the teachers on this piece. I'm looking in terms of the timing, I guess the minutes that I guess at each class levels, the kindergartens, the 1-3, and then the 4-12. And looking at this, and I know that the plan does say synchronous and asynchronous time, so that not at one given time, like a kindergarten is not going to have 180 minutes all at one point, all online, that hopefully there's some other minutes involved where there's going to hopefully be some activity involved, because, you know, maybe an activity where they will allow families to take maybe 15-20 minutes at the end, or add it on to the lunchtime hour for them to be able to do some physical activity while they're having lunch. Something that will take away all those time on all the screen time that sometimes all these, especially the younger children, are having a difficulty time, you know, adapting to it. And I know that because I've been watching my grandson going through those problems as a kindergartner. The other piece of it is being able to, the issues that we had with involvement, stakeholder. I know you mentioned all the various committees and stakeholders that were involved in giving you response to this plan, but I think it was evident, but not so much from the people that the people that gave comment this evening, but of the various emails that I think most of us board members have received, that we need to make sure there's more of a clear communication amongst all the parties between all the families and the school district to get a better idea of how things are working at home. And I know I was part of the DLAC committee when Dr. Mora did present the plan there. So I know what it was and how, extensive she explained the plan to a lot of our Spanish-speaking leadership in our schools. But just on the same hand, a lot of these committees represent certain leadership groups within the entire school district. And aside from, I think, maybe PTA, where you have PTA leadership and they have continuous PTA meetings where there's a larger community that participates and gets to hear some of the information. Maybe some of the other leaders that are in some of these, or stakeholders or parents that are involved in these committees sometimes might not have the same opportunity to engage with other families to expand that information that they receive in these committees. So hopefully in the plan, Dr. Mora, you can at least include or talk about more and revise more or less of a plan that's more, that seeks a more two-way communication with parents to see how work is going on presently in the pandemic and in future. What is the expectations in terms of coming back to the classroom and what that would look like? We have a lot, like I said, it's a real hard situation because we don't know and we have to rely, and I will abide by Dr. Dradi's view that we have to abide by the county's view in terms of the safety, the health and safety of opening up back our classrooms. I mean, that's for me, those are the professionals, those are the people that are going to guide us through this work. And I know other counties might be doing something different, other states are doing something different, all around the world, everybody's viewing it differently. But I think we have to guide ourselves with LA County in the fact that when we tried opening, the numbers spiked. And that's the last thing we want to do, is to create any kind of safety situation amongst our families and our teachers. The only other thing that I also wanted to bring up is, I know that's what the question I had asked earlier in terms of the hybrid models that are coming up. If a lot of this is still not, it's a plan in action. It's hopefully, Dr. Mora did say it's a fluid kind of plan that we hopefully more input into things are going to be changing. So I don't know how we can make it look like in the plan so that people understand that it is a fluid plan, and that even though, and make everything general in the way we're describing this whole plan, so that things will get more specific as the time comes and we continue doing our research, and we can get more specific in terms of the things that we will be taking on, that we can do that. And I don't think we have to maybe change the plan in itself, because like I said, it's an overall comprehensive piece, but at least I want to make the message sound to our families that they will have a voice. And in terms of how hopefully they foresee, and how, like we heard from the mother this morning with 4 children, I think in her household, it's difficult. And, it's easier for maybe some parents that only have 1 or 2 children, but when you have, 4 children, it's just a handful. I can see, I saw her pain. So I think we have to be more flexible in that sense, to listen to some of the families that are having a hard time, to listen to the teachers that have worked right now are very stressed out and overwhelmed. And if there's any way that we can set up a mechanism to help the teachers in a way that maybe, some of the professionals that we have, the reading and math specialists that are coming in, if they can come in to help support the teachers in a certain way, so that some of their time is taken off of them, so that they're able to to not be always online, for the full 6 hours during the day, and then have to go back and log off and then do their own work, for the students. And so there has to be a better way. There just has to be a way. And I'm not the expert on this, but I'm hoping that if we allow everybody involved to kind of give in their input, I'm hoping with the principals of each of the principals, along with the superintendent, because you're the leadership team, and that you're able to come up with a better approach, I think, and alleviating some of the stress level amongst our teachers and our families, and better support, and continue doing what we want to do, to continue to do the good things in this district of education. But I think we're getting to the point that here we are 1 month and we're already getting to a breaking point. So I think we kind of have to stop and kind of reassess where we're going. And I'm hoping this plan, you can do that, Dr. Mora and Dr. Dradi, and come back and give us some changes that you've made on the 24th meeting, so that we can be in a better situation as a board, I myself as a board member, to be able to vote for this plan. Because I know we have a September 30th deadline. But like I said, we're not going to be able to do a lot of surveying between then and the 30th, but at least to leave it open in that sense of the plan, that we will continue to at least have that communication with everybody involved, with all the stakeholders, to make sure that everybody's being heard. And it doesn't seem like it's all rhetoric and it's just this plan and whatever's, that it's just being demanded by the board or Dr. Dradi or Dr. Mora, but it's really our plan. It should be our plan here in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Ralph?
Just a couple of comments. You can hear me? Yes? As everybody else, thank you, all staff, and particularly Dr. Mora, for an incredible amount of work in holding this together. It's whatever. It's our guidebook. It's our Bible. It's how we get through this process. And I say that because, when we are completely through this process, and back in school full time, everybody, there's a lot that we shouldn't just put all this aside and say, we're done with that. Let's get back to what we're doing. We're learning so much about how to use technology. And I know the teachers are feeling that, and we should then have those discussions whenever that is, 6 months or a year from now, even on how to, keep the best practices that we're learning now into education our students, because we're truly done the right way. We're accelerating our ability to provide 21st century skills for our students. So there's a lot, although it's tough and it's hard, there's a lot of value out of what's coming out of here. One question, or one area, there's really two areas I want to talk about. One is the survey. And Dr. Dradi, will we be, doing the same survey? I don't know if you've thought about that there might be value in, if it's appropriate, look back at the questions, and Dr. Mora, using the same survey questions, so that there's some kind of way to compare the responses that we got, a few months ago, with the experiences that our families are having now. So I just put that out there, so it's not just, it's completely new questions. And so if we just put everything else aside, what we do now should build upon what we found out before.
Yeah. So there are two surveys where we need to at a minimum send out, which is the first to evaluate what's happening in distance learning, people's satisfaction and their struggles. So that's coming out next week, so that way we can make these adjustments we need to make with the distance learning. There's going to be a second survey that'll come out that we have not developed yet at some point around the reopening options that we're gonna present. So the first one, I think, the first one I was describing is a new one because there is no other one like it from the past. I think it's the one for the next time. I think that's when we can try to see if we can use some of the questions from the past. But I want to take the community through a journey first,
right?
Before we actually develop that, because I'm just not sure if people remember the options the way I remember it. I know I was stating it at the town hall meetings and all that, but I'm just not sure when I talk about hybrid, are people understanding it the same way I'm understanding it? So I want to make sure all that it's.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, we're asking similar questions. Anyway, that's just, how do we tie all this together to get the most information? And the other part is just really about, which I know we all care about, and is infusing all this, is wellness. But it's wellness for our students, at first, and then wellness for, the families and the parents, and wellness for our staff. And so, I don't want to put aside the talk we're hearing about the incredible efforts it's taking for teachers to do this incredible job, amazing job they're doing. And so when we talk about wellness, it's our entire community, and we need to hear and listen to it and understand, because how to keep the best of our abilities, all the different components of our family whole, and healthy as much as we can. Because if teachers, even a small percentage of them, struggle with this in an ongoing way, it's going to impact the families and the students. So we just, for me, we really just need to be open about that conversation and hear what people are saying, make sure we're adapting or modifying in a way that responds, and that we're, bringing in, doing whatever we can to help them out, so that they're not, I may be up every night, midnight working, but they don't need to be. Anyway, so, I just think it's real crucial that we, that's always the first thing in mind is the health and safety of all the components of our family. And then how we educate will be more successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. I'm going to jump in here quickly, I hope. What I've been hearing, I'm going to try to coalesce a lot of what's been going on tonight. What I'm hearing from our community is we're never going to be able to make everybody happy. We have one cohort of our community that, while distance learning wasn't their preference, they're happy with what they have right now. And they'd like to continue what they have right now because they feel it best suits their family and their children. We also have a cohort of people that do not like the distance learning model, that either want something in person or something that works better for them. So we're hearing both of these. The survey that Dr. Drotti says will go out next week will be addressing these issues. That way, it's not going to be anecdotal based on who comes to the board meeting or who sends more emails. It'll be based on data from all of our schools. So looking forward to that next week from Dr. Drotti and the team. Next, this dense presentation from Dr. Mora is not something written in stone that we cannot adapt and adjust. She put this together because LACO told her 3 days ago, hey, by the way, this is the new form that you have to fill out. And by the way, it's 36 pages. I mean, that's a Herculean effort, but it's not, the 10 commandments come down from Mount Sinai. This is a living, breathing document that we will adjust. So from what I'm hearing, we will have a survey going out to parents to find out what's working for you, what isn't working for you. We will have a survey going out to teachers, what's working for you, what isn't working for you. And then we can make some bigger adjustments and bigger planning. In the near term, it sounds like we've heard from a lot of teachers, which is becoming beyond anecdotal. Doctors Mora and Drotti have said they're going to look at things they can do now to ease that burden a little bit that will not affect the instruction. That might give teachers a little bit of a pause, which is wonderful. They will do that work. So that voice has been heard as well. On a personal note, I just want to say, I'm still looking for the moonshot. I'm still looking for the cohort of families that want to stay home and do distance learning, which has been successful. And the cohort of families that want to come back to school in a hybrid model, because that's all we can accommodate. And when you're not in school, you have synchronous learning from what is happening in that classroom. Now, it might not be possible because of limitations that we have on our campuses and scheduling and whatnot. I don't know, but we're not going to give up on that. So the people who are worried about third-party providers coming in, that's not our priority. That's not, I don't think, the priority of the board. So what I'm saying is we're hearing the community, we are addressing the community, and we're going to have near-term, midterm, and longer-term reactions coming out. So thank you all for sharing your opinions. And I look forward to what Dr. Dradi and his team will put together moving forward. Is there anybody else who wants to chime in? Richard and Lori. Lori?
Richard, were you first?
No, I was just asking. I was going to say Craig next, but
Okay.
Lori?
All I was going to say is you said most of what I would say, so I want to agree with everything you just said, John. And the only couple things I wanted to add is that I do want us to consider seriously what has at least one person raised tonight, and it's been raised in emails, and I think we've talked about it before, which is that as we look at how we return, that we consider staging that return and starting with the youngest kids and moving up to older and older kids. And then the only other thought I had is that I don't know, I'm sure it differs from site to site, but in addition to surveys, it seems to me that another place to obtain valuable input from both teachers and parents is at the site level. And so I'm hoping that there will be ways that principals engage with both their teachers, which I'm sure they do because they must have staff meetings, and with parents in some format, even if it's a site PTA meeting or whatever kind of meeting can be put together. Because I feel like we need a combination of hard data that comes out of surveys and human data, if you will, more subjective, but in serious numbers, so that it's not just random people's views, because it is true that we are trying to do the impossible, which is to put together something that serves people who have a lot of different needs. And so we got to do the best we can to meet as many of them as possible, and to hear what they are and address those.
Thanks, Lori. And just to reinforce what you just said, these public comments that we've heard from the 5 people who spoke are very valid. They're very valid comments. And as you can hear, we're discussing them. We are having conversations that have been motivated by their comments. Those are very valid. So are the 5,000 responses we get from surveys. So I don't want to look like we're diminishing 5 comments by saying, oh, these are the anecdotal stories or the emails that we get from maybe 30 people. We have a responsibility to reach out to all of our people, the ones who don't come to our meetings and don't turn comments in. Craig or TJ, do you have anything you want to add? If not, we will move on to the next item.
I have just a quick thing. I don't want to step on Craig's toes if he was going next. I too want to say I agree with most everything that my colleagues have said this evening, and particularly, John, how you framed it. I have a child in the district, and when, me personally, my family would prefer that my child were back on the campus, and he would like to be back on the campus. And so I think the persons had heard me talk about the distance plus some time ago. So the piece of direction that I would want the staff to hear is on that plus component, which I know they're working on, of what potentially might come down the road, and noting what that one speaker did say as well about opportunities a few times a week for students. But I also want to say, kind of as a reflection, because I know a lot of our community is listening to this, that it is really a difficult task for our staff, and I want to commend them and thank them, particularly Dr. Moore, your side of the house with regards to the work that you're doing and working directly with our teaching staff, because as John said and Lori said and everyone else, just every different family might have a different set of circumstances, and they have different needs. And so I know you are being incredibly flexible, and you are working to try and meet the needs of all students. And if there will ever be some sort of social science study that happens post-COVID, we're going to see this. There are so many people who are hurting. I'm the co-director of the Public Policy Institute at SMC, and we have an upcoming forum, and part of our forum is going to be called Cranky COVID Syndrome, and how to kind of survive this syndrome and talk about the well-being and the health component, the wellness that Ralph talks about. It's real. And when persons come to speak to us and they share their pain and their frustration and how they in their own homes are working to kind of manage, I think all 7 of us want to convey that we hear that and we empathize with that, and we're living it right alongside with them in different ways. But I also want the folks who are listening and the parents and the teachers to know that our district staff is working right along with them. And Ralph, I stay up late with you too, so we're working late. And I know that Jackie and Ben and the teachers are doing that. And so I don't want there to be a breaking point, and I want us to continually be working together and not to lose sight that we're in this together. And I know that's really hard, and I get frustrated and cranky myself. So I just want to say thank you. I look forward to the continued good work together. My one piece, John, with regards to direction from the board members, that I am eager, as I think some are, but not all, for an identification of what that plus might be. And then I think and as I close, I'll just say that I always, would think that local control is important, which we think we have, but it's also, I think, important for us to note as trustees of the district, we board members that are delegates in the district as representatives of the Board of Education, that so much is outside of our control. I mean, Dr. Mora having to jump through this hoop in a short amount of time and to do what exactly I think that John or Lori articulated, or at least how they framed it, is just remarkable. And if people were paying attention to Dr. Dradi, which I think many of us were, when you were defining those various options, the night before we were told, guess what, all of that legwork that you humans did to try to come up with a plan that would be as good for as many people as possible, guess what, you can't do that. You have to all be remote. That there are those contingencies that you can maybe try to imagine all of them, but you can't really foresee them. So again, thank you. And I look forward, I guess, to our next week's meeting, John, where I suspect we'll be giving even more direction then. Thank you.
Greg? Yeah, sadly. I was trying not to speak because there's been more than enough speaking tonight. So I agree with so much of what's been said and disagree with some of what's been said. I think what the piece that I haven't heard yet, and not explicitly, is we're in the middle of a global crisis. And the reason that folks are at home is people are dying in unprecedented numbers from an unprecedented illness. And we, as the school district, can only do what the state allows us to do, what the county allows us to do. And I think, and I hope that people understand that you don't get on a school board to not serve the very best interests of the students. And you sure as heck don't become a teacher or a head of curriculum and instruction or a superintendent of school district if you're not here to do absolutely everything you can do to help the students. So the first thing I think that needs to be said is we're in the middle of a global disaster. The second thing is what Jackie and Ben and all of the staff and all of the teachers have done is absolutely remarkable. This distance learning that's taking place right now is really incredibly remarkable, considering the amount of time and the fact that that is not even close to what we were ever thinking or planning to do. So the fact that this exists at all is pure credit to the hard work and the imagination and the willpower of district leadership, of our teachers, of the collaboration that we have. And then the third thing that really struck me was what Ben said about, yeah, I was going to work on that piece. I was waiting till the 4th week of school because I kind of had to get the plane to land for the first 3 weeks, because remember, we weren't planning on doing any of this and we're not set up to do any of this. We're set up to be an in-person school district, and they won't let us. I'm going to say that again. They won't let us. So I have complete faith that staff is listening to the teachers and the parents, and to the extent we can, in an underfunded school district, in an underfunded state, with kids who need so much differentiation, I am absolutely certain that the week 4 will take advantage of the knowledge of weeks 1, 2, and 3, and week 8 will take advantage of the first 7 weeks, and that this will continue to evolve and evolve in a really, really positive direction. And meetings like this are really important to ground ourselves, as are the surveys and the lived experience of everybody else. And the last thing I want to say is, please, 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 everybody understand, we want to get the kids back in school at the first moment we safely can. There is nobody who thinks distance learning is superior to getting kids into classrooms where they can be social, where they can learn, where they can have that eye-to-eye relationship with their teacher, who's such an important mentor, whether they're 5 or 18. So we will get our kids back into classrooms as soon as we're allowed and as soon as we safely can. And please don't have any doubt about that. What you're seeing here is people doing the very best they can with what they've been given. And man, I really think our staff is punching well above anything that we could reasonably expect, or things we're seeing elsewhere. So I'm really honored to have been a small part of this. I think you guys are doing great, and I know you'll keep doing greater, and you'll keep listening and improving. And thank you, all of you, teachers, staff, Jackie and Ben, thank you.
You're here. You're here.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was a good way to close the item. That was very important, and a good discussion, good presentation. Thank you, everyone. Major action item 6, revised board meeting schedule. How's that for a record scratch? Sarah.
Yes, very exciting item. At the last board meeting, you amended your board bylaw, which changed the start date for a new board member or re-elected board member's term to begin on the second Friday of December instead of the first Friday in December. What that does is it requires a change in your regular board meeting for December. So what this item does is it takes your regular item, which had been December 10th, makes that a special board meeting, because you still have to adopt the first interim budget before December 15th. And then it adds a new regular board meeting in December for the next Thursday. I believe that's the 17th. And that will be your new regular board meeting, where whomever is on the board and has been elected or re-elected will be new board members there. So that's what this item does.
Great. Do we have a motion? Moved by Lori, seconded by Richard. Any questions or comments on this? We'll go to a roll call. Richard?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Oscar? I'll come back to, there's Oscar. Great. Thanks, Oscar. Lori?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Craig?
Yep.
Nodding yes. I am a yes. That is 7 yeses. Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, I just had this thing like, oh my God, I'm on mute this whole time and I'm talking and I didn't pay attention to see if I was unmuted. The world we're in. Item 7, approve appointments to district advisory committees. Do we have somebody introing, or should I just read who they are? And all right, I'm going to read who they are because it's a committee that I'm a liaison for. We are we are moving to appoint to the to CDAC, Special Education DAC, Angela Scott and Grace Lanzetta. And I'm going to move that item. Is there a second?
Second.
By Maria. Any discussion on this? Roll call. Richard?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. I am so excited to have these two wonderfully engaged parents on CDAC. Thank you so much for your service to the district. Which now brings us to general public comment. I believe we have 2.
We do. We have 2 public comments. You'll have 3 minutes apiece, and please know that since these are not comments on agendized items, we will not be having any discussion about them. First is Wendy Dembo and then Alex Modeloso.
Asked her to unmute. Let's see if it's. I see her. It's not unmuting. I wonder, Wendy, if you can hear us. I'm trying to unmute you. Do we want to do Alex and come back to Wendy?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, I don't see Alex. Modeloso. Let's see. I don't see Alex.
Okay. I can't see anybody, so.
Yeah, I've clicked for Wendy to unmute, but it's not, she's not unmuting. I wonder if she stepped away from her screen. I don't know.
I don't see Alex on the board anymore. We have a couple more pieces of business. If Wendy, if you hear us and you can unmute yourself, please identify while we're still here. We go to board member items. There's one thing I want to share with the board members that there will be a sign up in the Friday memo going out tomorrow that will have a sign up for entering to go to class, to log on to Zoom classes that are being taught throughout the district. So we can encourage everybody to go see what the teachers are doing, go see what's happening, and put a face on all the terms that we're talking about. So please look in your Friday memo to sign up for visiting classrooms. I'm sure our teachers would appreciate that, as would our parents. Continuation of public comments. Wendy Dembo? I'm sorry, Wendy. Board member comments. Any board member comments? Seeing none, I will go to future agenda items. Seeing none, I will move to adjourn, and the board will return to closed session for one more item. So I will see the board members in closed session, and thank you all to our community for joining us tonight. And we will come back next week for the approval of that item. Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Have a lovely evening.
Give me a couple of minutes to go to the facility.
Absolutely. Board members take 5 minutes. We'll see you at 9 o'clock.